Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome. We're here for ClassiCast number 23, I believe. Counting's getting hard. These numbers are starting to get kind of high. I lose track after 21 actually. But welcome guys. We're here with Yethicins, or Sakar, as his Twitch name is, Caden House, on Twitter as well. Former WoW community manager. For those of you guys who don't know who Yethicins is, who Sakar is, I gotta get used to calling you by one name.
Yeah, my phone name's dead now. Technically, yeah. That means a banned account. So
yeah, but yeah, basically he there's some YouTube videos. He's been on my stream. He's been streaming recently. Sakar was a part of the 800 or so employees who were recently laid off by Blizzard, and he was a big part of the Classic community, the WoW community in general, obviously as a community manager, but specifically to the Classic community. I know he was a I would say our line of communication as far as community goes to Blizzard, and you know, obviously something that a lot of people are really upset to see happen. Of course, I'm also here with Stay Safe TV, Tips Out Baby, my co-hosts, and this is gonna be a very good episode. I'm very excited. So yeah, actually let's talk a little bit about how we met for the first, because the first time we met is actually kind of funny. So those of you guys who don't know the story, many of you do, I'm sure. I used to stream vanilla WoW private servers, do videos and stuff, as did Stay Safe. And
undocumented servers?
Undocumented, yeah. Yeah, undocumented. And basically what happened was I ended up getting striked. I got a DMCA, I got a copyright ban after the Classic announcement. And it was myself and a few other guys. Stay Safe was lucky, he dodged the bullet, but but basically we were like in a group of people, and we were like, okay, like what do we do? And then I said to Stay Safe and a couple others, I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna try and ask around and see if I can get in touch with anybody from Blizzard, and see, you know, what are the rules? Like, what can I do? What can I not do?
See what we can do as far as content, right?
Right. So like, I tried to Discord DM a few people, email, this and that. The one person who actually got back to me was Sakar. It was Yethicins. And we ended up having a conversation that night, and kind of like, hey, like, you know, this is, you know, we don't think you're a bad guy or anything like that, obviously. Like, it's just the way things go, and it's like the legal side of stuff. And he actually recommended to me to email somebody else to kind of like talk about it a little bit more, like what kind of content we can make. And eventually that led to, you know, and I basically said, look, I don't want to do anything. I want to put my channel in the best position that I can possibly put it in for Classic. I don't want to do anything to, you know, ruin my relationship with Blizzard. I'm not a bad guy. I just kind of want to do my own thing, and just do things the right way to continue growing my channel and to keep doing the content that I want to do, especially whenever Classic comes out. And that's the same way Stay Safe feels. That's the same way Tips feels. And when it came down to it, it was, hey, like you can't do private server footage. That's basically what it is. Like you can't do private server stuff on video. You can't video that just because of DMCA stuff. So I was like, okay, we're gonna have to figure out a way to continue doing what we want to do and to continue to grow our channels the right way. So that's kind of the early part of like how ClassiCast has started. And actually, we had talked about the podcast, but that's the only thing we talked about that a few weeks ago. But yeah, so that's kind of it. I mean, if it wasn't for Yethicins kind of at least responding, you know, out of all the people that I messaged, like who knows, like what could have happened. So well, that was really, really big. Sort
of like the guidelines he gave us probably saved you from getting more DMCAs, and I've never got one. Saved me from getting my first one.
Yeah. No, like for sure. So that was like a really big deal. So yeah, if it wasn't for that, like who knows where we'd be right now. But
I still feel bad about it. I still feel bad.
Yeah. No, like we know, like it wasn't like something personal or anything. But yeah, that's kind of how we got to know Sakar. That's how we got to know Caden. And yeah, to be here now, everything like since the Classic announcement, and just seeing everything that like you have put into the community, like it's been a big part of. It's been a big part of the development of Classic for sure.
I mean, so like I have a question for you real quick. So you were sort of like, from my point of view, at least I think a lot of people's point of view, you were like the go-to Classic CM. You were talking the most about Classic. Is that something that you wanted to do, or was that work delegated to you, or how did that happen?
So interesting enough, there isn't any specific community managers that are assigned to Classic. It's just
okay.
I was the person who wanted to kind of charge into it and do it because I was probably out of all of us, I think I was the most excited about the project. So I wanted to actually I wanted to do it just because I wanted to do it, and I kind
There
of
you go.
genuinely was enthusiastic about it.
Mhm.
And at least it kind of felt more genuine whenever I wanted to talk about it, and I knew kind of what topics I wanted to engage about it, or at least touch on when I could. Um,
No
versus,
doubt.
say the retail game. Even though I can talk about the retail game to a high degree, and I still love it, I also wanted to basically be a part of the classic community as well, because I was one of these players that wanted it for years.
Mhm.
Funny enough, I actually didn't want it for the longest time until uh, I think seeing the passion that actually you guys were still putting into this game that actually isn't officially supported, and that's actually kind of what
Right.
changed my perspective on it, and being like, no, okay, I want this now. Uh,
Mhm.
and I just kind of ran it the second I had the opportunity to start talking about it. I just ran into it because I was like,
Yeah.
I want to do this.
Did you play back in vanilla? Do you have any fond memories of it?
I did, and I do. My roommate, who came with me out to California as well, we're both from we're both like middle school best friends. Still friends to this day, and we met because of World of Warcraft. Uh, he actually got me to start playing the game, and I believe he was a like level 40 hunter when I started, and I made a level 1 gnome rogue, and I saw his pet and I thought he was a god, and he like ran me through dead mines and stuff, and like helped me like get going. And I was like, how do you get so good at this game? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And it turns out it's just another like 20 levels.
Right. Right.
It's another 20 levels, and it doesn't matter. But like, I didn't get to do any content in vanilla other than playing with other people, which was the content. Like, I didn't get into my first raid until Burning Crusade, and the second I got in there, I
Mhm.
was like, oh, this is amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Burning Crusade. I think we've talked about it before. Like, we're all big fans of Burning Crusade as well. So like, it's that's something we're hoping to see. If Classic does well, we're hoping to see that from Blizzard too. How have the past few weeks been for you? Really, since I guess since everything went down.
Confusing and a little strange. Easiest
Yeah.
way to say is just confusing, because it's the worst moment, but it's also like kind of like the sweetest at the same time, because
Mhm.
I didn't expect any sort of response. I kind of thought I would be like another one of the CMs that just kind of fade into the black, that no longer associated with WoW, kind of
Right.
isn't really, like, I guess, relevant within World of Warcraft anymore. Uh,
Right.
which that's all I ever do is play WoW anyway. So even though I don't even work at the company anymore, I still fucking play this game.
Right.
I'm
Right.
still playing it. Uh, it's been strange. Like, I didn't expect the response that I got to the tweets I made, or even with the whole streaming thing.
Mhm.
I remember I think the day after, I was having like one of the worst mornings ever. It was the first morning I woke up no longer being a part of the company,
Right.
and I got messages from all of you guys, all three of you, and Sfan, will you, like, I was in bed and I didn't even want to get up, and I didn't want to like move. And Svan like encouraged me to like just get on Discord and just talk with them. And so me and you sat in Discord and just like chatted for like 2 hours, I think is what it
Mhm.
was. And you were like, you should just stream. Like, he's like, just take it as like a therapy thing. Just kind of hang out and chat. Like, people would love it. And I just started doing that, and it was incredibly therapeutic. And I've somehow grown to love this weird little thing that I've been doing almost every day since.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
nice, isn't it? It changes your opinion on gaming. Like, before I started streaming, I could not play single player games on my own, but now I feel like playing single player games on stream is almost as fun, if not funner, than multiplayer games sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really strange, especially playing something like WoW. Because a lot of times when I'm doing stuff, people are asking me questions, because not a lot of people get to ask, I guess, former Blizzard employee, how the philosophy is, or what do you think about how this is done, or what's the actual story kind of behind it. So that's been kind of fun to kind of, I guess, peel the curtain back a little bit to
Yeah.
let everyone know more about how the sausage is made, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and hopefully we'll peel the curtain back a little bit more today too. Whenever Classic was, actually, first off, before we do anything, you're still under NDA, right?
Yep, still. That's pretty much the way like an NDA works. Is it's in per so It's just
there's just certain things like you can't talk about because of NDA and all that.
Yeah.
Which is fine, right?
Pretty much can't talk about anything that isn't publicly known. So once you guys know about it, then I can talk about it. But that's really about it.
You should just tell us everything that you can't talk about, so we know not to ask about it.
Yeah. Let's get this list right here. Let's just start going down it.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get into it. When did you first find out about Classic? Like Classic was announced 2 years ago now, right? It was at BlizzCon 2017. Okay, I got my years right. It was announced. I know we've all talked about it. None of us expected it. Stay Safe thought it was a joke. I was playing Madden in my living room. Like Tips was freaking out. It was a whole thing, right? When did you actually find out? When did you first find out about Classic being a thing? Like this was actually going to be something that's real?
I found out about 7 months before you guys did.
Ooh. 7 months?
Yeah, I found out about 7 months before you guys did. And when they told us, I also had the same response of, that's a good joke. That's really funny.
Wow.
Wow.
And and then they finally told us and they were like, no, this is a real thing. And it was so funny because it had for everyone who was related to WoW, it had this weird effect. Like once it was finally like determined, we're doing this thing. This is a real project. This is really going to happen. We're making this happen. And that's when they announced it to the team officially. And when we got back to the office, because this was at like an offsite, like all hands thing was when this was announced to us.
Mm-hmm.
When we got back to the office, like it was me and the rest of the community, the NA community team. We were all sitting there, speechless. Kind of didn't know what to do the rest of the day because we were like, we're actually gonna do this.
Yeah.
This is real.
Do you know how long they had been working on it prior to telling you?
From what I put together, and I could be wrong, they had been working on it for about a year or so at that point. There was like a couple of people who were
that's insane.
Wow.
That's like basically right after NOS shut down, like a month or two later.
Yeah.
Like, let's do it.
From my understanding, I could be totally wrong. This is actually just me making a guess from what I've pieced together. It sounded like they had been working on it for about a year before, at least the team that was kind of putting this together to see if it was possible. They'd been working on it for about a year before we were even told that this was a real project and we were doing this.
That's so sick, honestly.
So,
wow.
7 months prior to the announcement, that would have been right before I started streaming, which would have been right around Elysium launch. That's whenever you found out. If it was about a year before that, NOS had shut down around that time.
Yep.
So yeah, that's right. And then they had Nano and the NOS crew go to Blizzard.
So yeah,
a few months after that.
So prior to having the Nostalrius team out, they were already working on Classic WoW, is what that means.
Yeah, that's what that means.
I think so. I think it was like a little passion project. I'm not sure at all.
Yeah, like it just so happens to be that they were working on it on the side, and then they came out, and then like the whole thing kind of like panned out that way.
And I'm sorry, there's probably people from the Classic team watching. If I'm getting the dates wrong, I'm really sorry.
Right.
I could be totally wrong. This is me kind of making guesses and putting things together at least.
It's still cool. Like, I mean, regardless of when it happened, I mean, even 7 months before the announcement, like, I think a lot of us had thought that they'd been working, or they started working on it very like recently, like very close to the announcement. But I want to ask you, Caden, what was the general like office reaction to it when they told you? Shock when it was like happening?
Yeah, because we were like, oh, this is real. This is actually real. And then we immediately started talking about what does this mean for World of Warcraft? Not as what it would mean for the live game. What does this mean for like World of Warcraft as a franchise? Like this is huge because when WoW originally launched, you didn't have things like YouTube, Twitch, like this world of content creation didn't exist when WoW originally launched. And so it was like we finally get to see what that looks like. And it was kind of like all of our brains in the room were just like firing off of all these ideas of kind of like, this is going to be incredible. Like, all of these things existed partly kind of because of the content creation that spun out of the original game of players trying to figure out how do you even do this? Like things like Machinima exist because of games like World of Warcraft. And so it's interesting to think of like art forms exist because of this game, and the original, like, or at least the ways that we do it now, had to have no realm existed back then. Like like video capture was a very difficult thing to do, and now it's something that the computers you buy at Best Buy on a budget can do it.
Yeah. Well, and like not just that, but like software wise too. Like I remember, if you had like a full copy of Fraps, that was a very rare thing. Every video you saw was www.fraps.com at the top. You had like the free trial or whatever.
Yeah.
People making PvP montages with the Fraps like advertisement at the top.
Yeah. I remember that. Now it's like everybody uses OBS and it's like it's free, you know. Which came out with a new version today. I'm gonna need to upload that or update that actually. So basically, you found out about this about 7. Dude? Think about how crazy it is that it was official 7 months before the announcement, and there was no leaks or nothing. Like nobody said a word. You know, for something insane. That big, it's actually totally crazy to think about that. So your direct involvement with Classic, you know, your community manager, and we had talked about this before, right? It's like a lot of times people perceive it's a huge misconception whenever they talk about like developers, right? They say it's developers, and a lot of times they're talking about like programmers and stuff. But as far as people who contribute to the development of the game, it's not always the people who are only like writing the code out. Like a big part of what you did is you took a lot of feedback and whatnot from us. This is what we know. But will you go ahead and explain like what your involvement was with like the development of Classic?
Yeah, so to be honest, most of my involvement with like the Classic project was me wanting to just be in the room and just kind of talk to those guys. So I'd find any excuse to go talk to them. And I hope they see this. I hope they see this clip. And Brian and everyone, I miss you guys. I looked for any excuse to walk over into their area and just chat with them. And I think Brian once or twice kind of try to get me to like shoo me raise. Like it's great to see you. I'm like, and they're wanting to talk about the whole thing constantly.
Yeah, it's like, hey, they're on the forums talking about loot trading again. They're like, yeah, we know, Caden.
Yeah, kind of a little of that. Funny enough, I actually didn't know where they sat for the longest time, and I talked to them for a little bit through like just like through messages, through like our chat programs and emails. And then when I finally figured out where their area was, I went over there as much as I could.
What about stuff like the dev water coolers? Did you help put those together? Or I guess another question in addition to that, what goes into making those and distributing those?
So dev water coolers, they are incredibly annoying from everything. Really? I wasn't involved with the Classic one, but from what I've been told, the Classic one, it was a want by a couple of higher ups, and so they actually had written everything down. And then it basically goes back and forth between a bunch of people. So say the first person wrote it down, sends it to the Classic team approves it, then it goes to the next person. The next like high up reads it, but with it makes some edits, changes based on like what they want you guys to know yet, what they don't want you guys to know yet, that kind of thing. And then it just keeps going back and forth through constant iterations. And that happens for like a month sometimes.
Oh, wow.
And then eventually it works its way down finally into a blog post, and then it comes down to us. It takes a while.
Damn,
wow.
That's crazy. Do you think, I guess before I ask you that, like, if you were to be able to write your own blog post, right, your own dev water cooler update, what's the topic that you would want to see talked about the most when it comes to Classic?
Talked about the most? I'd want, honestly, just talking about some of the basically the rebuilding and reverse engineering of some of the stuff that they have to do, because I think it's the most interesting thing from my perspective of hearing what all they're working on and how they're accomplishing these crazy things. Like, you know, the fact that you get something like elevators working again in, say, Thunderbluff.
Mm-hmm.
How do you redo that? How do you get boats to work again? Because remember, boats didn't work very well back in the day. How do you choose to either replicate that old behavior or try to make them more robust and actually function? Like, right. Those conversations are really fascinating, and I could sit in their area and listen to them talk about it constantly.
Yeah.
Like, to talk about little things like that of how do you get these things to function like they did back in the day? How do you engineer this?
It's funny that you mentioned boats. I remember there specifically being I remember seeing a video about it years ago. There was stuff you could do, like how the boats were scripted, how they were coded, was you could change something client side to actually change where the boat takes you back in the day, and like people would use that, and they would like download another like MPQ file or something, and they would actually go to GM Island on like the boat to Darnassus or something. I don't remember what boat it was specifically, but they would do like crazy stuff like that, and then they get banned. But like, but I mean, I remember like boats specifically. Like now that you mention it, there was some funny functionality with that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make sure that behavior is replicated for Classic. It's very important.
Yeah. So, you know, kind of talking about the same thing here, or like on the same track. You were, as far as the community goes, you were like our go-to guy, right? You were like the go-to CM. Were there any? Was that like something that you wanted to? Was that a position that you wanted to be in? Maybe as like the Classic community manager, or was there anything that was like you thought might be on the table there, or what was your kind of plans there?
I mean, it was something that kind of happened naturally, where it seemed like I was probably going to be the one that handled it, just because I was like I was saying earlier, I was the most enthusiastic about it, and it kind of just happened. It just kind of seemed like it was going to be that thing where I was going to be in charge of it.
Right. Okay.
And then once it started happening, I was like, all right, sweet. I guess this is me now. I guess I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Do you think that Classic WoW is going to need a dedicated CM, or like are they going to have their own set of GMs that deal with, you know, Classic WoW problems? What do you think they're going to do as far as like customer support and customer service stuff?
They won't. I don't think they'll need a specific Classic CM. Just judging off of the stuff that I was doing with you guys, and just kind of mainly the majority of what I was doing was just making sure that you guys knew that we were still alive, and we were kind of acknowledging you.
Right.
But like, say once Classic gets here, like there's honestly isn't really a need for a Classic CM. Just kind of the regular ones can do both. It's pretty easy to handle both of them at the same time.
Right.
But for sorry, what was the other part of your question?
For GM, for any sort of like customer service stuff, yeah.
So from my understanding, that isn't figured out yet specifically to have something concrete down, but I imagine like it'll probably be handled like regular game masters will. It's game masters actually don't work on specific titles; they work on all of the games at the same time.
Oh,
so,
really? Okay.
Yeah. So there's no like specific role game masters that are like, oh, I only work on this game. Like they actually work on everything. So it'll be another like tool in their belt that they'll have to learn some little things in here and there. Most of the game masters actually played vanilla, so at least the ones that I know of, like they actually played vanilla, so it'll be a pretty easy pickup for them.
Right. So you're talking about like basically you making sure that we know that you're still alive, right? That was a big thing, because a lot of times like there's times where, and I think we've talked about this before, we feel like we're in the dark, right? Like it's like, oh, you don't know, like, okay, what's going on with Classic? Especially there was a long period of time after the announcement up until the first water cooler update, and then there was another water cooler update right before BlizzCon.
7.5 months, then like 3 months, then
yeah, it was something like that. Is there what all is the process of going into a water cooler update? Is it something, because I know for me, and I don't know, Stay Safe Tips, you guys might be in the same boat. Like it's just like, oh, okay, well, it's like writing a blog post, right? Like can't they just do this? Can you go into the process of actually putting out like a true, like a good water cooler update, and kind of being in depth about it too, as opposed to just like a forum post or something like that, like, hey, we're still alive?
So like for say something like a water cooler thing, forum post is actually super easy. It's just I needed to find something I could talk about, at least at that point in time, which is sometimes the hard part, is finding something you can actually talk about. Because a lot of it's decisions we haven't even answered yet. Like we don't know what we want to do about this yet. But say for example, like a water cooler, it can come from either the dev team wanting to do one. They'll have like an idea, which the Classic team has like a ton of ideas that they want to do. We got to figure out the timing for it and the strategy behind communication, that kind of thing. Like we're so far out still that it's kind of a little weird of how do you handle this while you're doing all of the existing communication based on, like, say, retail. You have to figure out how do you do all these things at the same time.
Is the team? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying, is the team kind of because obviously there is retail and like, we've often speculated that the team kind of, you don't want to cannibalize the hype of a certain product over another product. Were you guys scheduling like posts out based on like what was going to be scheduled for retail. For example, you knew retail was going to have some kind of communication this month, then maybe we'll schedule something next month or next week for classic, something like that. Does it work that way?
That typically would happen, but it wasn't really happening so much with classic because it wasn't enough that we were ready to talk about just yet. Because keep in mind, a lot of the work that is being done on classic is a lot of like it's like super back end stuff of trying to recreate a lot of the old functionality of things. So there's not a lot of like really really cool kind of content, at least for the average player to get kind of invested, but the hardcore player is going to love it. And it's kind of figuring out when's the right timing to do those kinds of things,
Right.
which sometimes is not as easy of an answer as you sometimes think it would be, but that's kind of where we were at with a lot of them. But we'll say like a dev water cooler, for example, the spell tech one, that I believe that was actually a want from the dev team, and so the dev team actually put that together, and then it worked its way down to community to post.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I gotta say, I think people are way more interested in that nitty gritty in the trenches back end stuff than maybe you guys realize. I think people are thirsty for that. I mean, we see the success of John Statt's book about developing vanilla WoW back in the day and how nitty gritty that was. I think people love that stuff. I would love after Classic WoW is out to hear a comprehensive story of everything they had to go through to make it a thing. I would love that.
It'd be a cool little YouTube video or like a little series or something on some of the kind of the processes they went through, because it was always interesting hearing how they were trying to accomplish some of the things, like say for example how they were managing to get say the old maps to work, because nowadays retail there's a map for all the dungeons, but classic doesn't have that. You have to get the zones to actually call the maps from the zones, not the dungeon. And there was no sort of like map whatsoever for dungeons, and like how do you get the current clients to behave that way?
That's so crazy. Like everything is so, like, it seems like such a manual process. Like when they told us originally they were going to do the 735 client, I kind of assumed, just like common sense, you would assume that everything would be kind of more automated and just flip a switch and set a couple settings and it'll port all the 112 stuff in there.
I mean, you saw with the demo, there was a lot of stuff in there that wasn't supposed to be in there. Say like the looking for group tool, that's not supposed to be in classic, and it was like we hadn't got the time to pull that out yet. It's not going to be there. S-Fan had a heart attack. I was like, it's not going to be there in the end. It's not going to be there at the end.
Well, so I saw videos. I saw the videos, and so whenever I was streaming at BlizzCon, the client that was on the floor at BlizzCon was different than the client that was pushed out publicly. Mm-hmm. And the client that was on the floor at BlizzCon didn't have the /LFG command. So people were spent.
It was hot at that point.
Like having like a heart attack, like freaking out about it. And I'm like, what? And so I went and I checked and I was like, no. Like, what are you guys talking about?
Like, I think that anyone reasonable probably assumed it was just a small oversight and an easy fix, but people really went crazy about that.
And a lot of people don't realize this, but like say the builds that say BlizzCon, they're using a different build than what you actually play at home. So even though some people at home were playing together on the classic servers, the show build at the floor actually was a different build. So people who were playing through different updates. So at that point, like the looking for group thing was already taken out of that build. So like people didn't see it. But say S-Fan saw the video and was like freaking the hell out. And I'm like, man, it's not there. It's not. I promise you, it's not going to be there.
No, I definitely we definitely talked a lot about at BlizzCon about a lot of stuff like after the classic announcement. Those of you guys who saw ClassiCast after BlizzCon, I know I came in and I was pretty hot, like just because and I know it was a lot of stuff that's like, okay, this is tentative, this is something we're thinking about, and we can get into that a little bit more here in a little bit. But just kind of going on the same track, you said that we're a long ways out, right? We're a long ways out from Classic, but I think at this point in time last year, we had gotten a BFA alpha, I believe, by February, and BFA ended up coming out in August. Now it got pulled up because it was originally September, and then it ended up being in the middle of August. That's kind of when we foresee, I think a lot of people foresee it coming out like somewhere between like July and September. If it comes out at about the same time as BFA did, do you think it would be, I guess, safe to hope for a beta here in the next like month or so, maybe a couple of months, if that's something they would want to do?
So full disclaimer on my answer here, because this is definitely something I don't know about.
Oh, okay.
Is this something I only heard like very early conversations on, and no, I have no idea what they're actually going to do. But
Okay.
it would be reasonable to expect a beta just to kind of make sure that, you know, the game is actually functioning how it's supposed to, and so
Yeah.
things are correct. It's very reasonable
Right.
to expect one, and I honestly am. I don't know if one's going to happen at all, but I would expect to probably see a beta. But I want to say they're probably going to think about it, probably of doing one for maybe like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, somewhere in there, because
sure.
at least with something like Classic, people are going to go in and zerg the hell out of it and no life it, and they're going to play all the content already. Like you don't want that. You don't want that to happen. Yeah, I would assume they're either going to branch it out into little chunks,
Like stress test almost.
yeah, like a stress test of certain level bands,
Okay.
or they're going to just have the whole thing open for maybe like a very limited amount of time, just to get a lot of reports to make sure that, hey, is all this functioning correctly? Compare it to reference client, whatever, and work your way through that, and make sure things are actually working well. I wouldn't expect a full like expansion level beta test or like an expansion level alpha test. I would expect more of like a limited time frame to be like, go into these areas, go, like specific kind of stress to make sure that the old escort quests are working correctly. Some of the old scripting for quests is actually functioning like it should, because some of that probably is going to break. Let's be real here. It's old stuff being redone.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a dumb question. Do they have anyone internally that they can, it's like a group of people say, hey, level 1 to 60 10 times and, report any broken quests. Do they have anyone? Do they do that internally? Do you know?
Yeah, that happens. The stuff like that happens internally. That's like normal QA work. Along with they do these things called play tests, where they try to get people associated with WoW to kind of take some time to go through and play these zones and to test some of it out and be like, oh, this is where we're at so far. And then the team and it's usually comprised of people who definitely played it back then, that can kind of weigh in on what it kind of feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Do they take volunteers?
That's a typical process.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Well, I couldn't figure out how to volunteer for it, otherwise I would have done it.
Yeah, no, I think something that I've talked about before is I would like to see a longer beta, just because I think there's so much stuff to actually test. What my concern is that if Blizzard goes in and they look at Classic, it's like, okay, we want to do this, finished, boom, send it out, and just kind of leave it there. Now, obviously, that's an ideal situation, right? To be able to do something, finish it, and send it out and not have to worry about it. But I think, obviously, private servers are different. I totally understand that. But I think just looking at what private servers have done is they go and they release something, and then they release like a new fresh server, after the lifespan of life cycle of the server, and there's always some differences, right? They say like, okay, well, we noticed that whenever we implemented this thing in the game a certain way, this was actually bad for the health of the server. So we're going to adjust this here. Like, we're going to put the PvP gear in instead of like instead of like around Nax time 1.10, we pull it back earlier, right before Nax, they put it in earlier. And then, or 1.11 rather. Actually, I'm confused. Was it 110 or 111? I'm blanking here. But regardless, it was 111, wasn't it? Okay, so they end up putting in an earlier, like around AQ patch, for example, like that. Those are the kind of changes that they would make, as those kind of like adjustments to kind of make it work better and like the flow of the game. And now, private server, retail vanilla, and WoW Classic meta are all going to be completely different. Not completely, but I would say there's significant differences between all the metas. And what my point is that I think that if the beta was longer, there would be more stuff to test, and that they could do what would be an ideal situation for them. If they put out the game and there's things that are like, oh, this is wrong or this is wrong, if they decide to release fresh servers, which is something that I think we should do, or that I think should be done, that we should get, Blizzard should be willing to constantly look at like, okay, this needs to be changed for Classic or whatnot, right? Like we need to adjust this here and there, like very much like how private servers have done it. Like, let's say the 4 phases thing. Like, I've talked everybody's heads off about 4 phases of content release. Let's say they come out with 4, and they're like, you know what, that was a bad idea, we need to make it 6. Or let's say they come out with 5 or 6 and like, you know what, that was a bad idea, we need to make it 8, right? I think that Blizzard should be willing to look at that and make those adjustments in like future fresh launches, if that's something they decide to do.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that's not like locked in stone of this is how they're going to do it. It's very much this is where their heads at and their ideas currently are kind of leaning towards of how to do this thing. When it comes to like say like the four content like phase thing, 4 waves of like content that they structured out and kind of laid out at BlizzCon. Now it's not really a this is 100% going to happen. You know, it's development. It could change. Like it could honestly be changed already, and we just not know about it. I don't even know where they're currently at on that because, like, I mean, I don't work there anymore, so
right.
So I don't know. But yeah, it's I think the team is very receptive to that kind of feedback because you guys are incredibly detail oriented when it comes to say classic. It's I would expect them to still be weighing options and seeing what they feel is the correct solution with pretty much anything at all.
And speaking of that, just to kind of dovetail off of that, so we have the stage releases, and then we also have, you know, a couple of things that were brought up at BlizzCon that were kind of concerning, I would say, is loot sharing and like sharding and right click to report. Would you say those are still kind of being discussed internally, or are those like definitely going to be in the game?
I would look at those as solutions to problems that we know are going to happen. And so it's kind of like those are the solutions that have been figured out that have at least worked for retail. So it makes sense that they would kind of possibly consider them for classic. Now, it could not happen at all. Like, let's be real here. This is totally unknown. We could get to classic, and these things could just straight up not happen. Right. Specifically with loot trading and like, you know, say like right click reporting, those things could be taken out and they could be not existent, but they're on the table for like solutions to problems. I think you guys asked Brian in the interview as well, whenever we had the group classic panel, and he very much talks about these are kind of things that they're at least weighing. They're on the table, but they know that they don't want to do those particularly, and they know the community is not going to like them, but it's going to be like problems that have to be solved. That kind of thing. It's the same way with sharding in general, with say like the launch that we've talked about a lot. It's a problem that's going to happen, and it's like, how do you deal with this problem? Do you just let it become a monster, or do you try to figure out how do we address this kind of thing?
Right.
A big beautiful monster, dude. Just let it go. Let him hang, dude.
Just to clarify real quick, I think some people might have been confused by the way you phrased it. When you said things that are going to happen, you were talking about the problems, right? Like, you know, that there's going to be a potential population issue. You know that there's going to be like if the GM team, like classic, is not going to be the same way as it is in retail vanilla WoW is the same as it's going to be in WoW classic. Like, a potential solution is loot trading that was on the table. So you know that like this could be a problem, and those are the potential solutions that are that have been kind of like brought forth so far. So and that was a lot of what we talked about actually at BlizzCon. So after BlizzCon, the day after BlizzCon, we went and we got breakfast together, and I know I basically just like laid out everything that I was like, okay, like, I don't like this because of this. I don't like, you know, the four phases because of this. I don't like sharding because of this. Loot trading. You know, when we had like...
SPN came to that breakfast with an agenda, I'm telling you.
Dude, I had a book written. I literally just like... But no, I came in and I said like, look, this is how people feel about this. This is how I personally feel about this. And, you know, we talked about everything. You know, I said like there needs to be probably at least 6 phases of content release, and I actually had written out what I thought, and I talked about it in my BlizzCon video that I did after I got back, and I said like this is what I think should happen. This is what I know had been done on like private servers, and I think this is like a happy medium. I think, you know, obviously if you could have 11 patches, that's probably best case scenario, but I know on private servers they don't even start with 1.1. Like, they usually start with 1.2. They package 1.1 and 1.2 together, you know, and they might package some of the stuff later on together, like 1.11 and 1.12 are together, and so on. So it's not something that's totally, you know, completely foreign, but I don't know. I think it's interesting because I know you were willing to sit down with me and basically get that feedback the whole entire time. And I talked your head off for, I think, dude, I legitimately think we were probably like talking for like 4 hours. We went and got breakfast, and Asmund was there, Reevy was there. It was pretty good.
Were you talking about the chat before we went and met up with Zach and
Yeah,
and
well,
Reevy?
before and then that, yeah.
Yeah, it was about like 4 or 5 hours, but I think me and
Yeah.
you were probably at breakfast for a good maybe
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there are a lot of different problems that could arise with loot trading or sharding, and I think like this is one of the values of having a longer beta, which is something I prefer. They can test these variables. Like let's say they have one beta phase where server cap is like 4,000, and they see if they don't need sharding, and then another beta phase where they try server cap 8,000, and they try it with sharding. You know what I mean? They can test these things and run through them and see how they actually play out. That's kind of what I would like to see. Or they try loot trading. They try it in a beta phase, and they see, how do players behave with this? Are players abusing this? Does it cause problems? Does it, you know what I mean? I really think they should actually try this stuff out and see what happens.
I wouldn't put it past like them probably wanting to do that kind of thing, or those kinds of things. Sorry, where they probably want to know what the behavior is of these players in these scenarios, because a lot of these are unknowns. We don't know how Classic would behave if you opened up a server with 4 or 5 times the cap that it was originally, that like modern retail could possibly support now, or at least the modern infrastructure could support now. We don't know. I'm pretty sure they would love the opportunity to literally play with all of you psychologically and see how you'd behave, just to see what would be perfect. Like I guarantee you they would probably love to do something like that, just to see what would happen.
No, absolutely. Like, I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but we're down, dude. We're definitely down for that. Speaking of like testing and stuff, like, obviously, whatever happens with the beta happens. Do you think that? I guess I just like to hear your opinion. Do you think that a longer or shorter beta would be better for the game?
We're talking about better for the game. I think a shorter one, but it's very focused. If you're confident enough in all the rest of the work, specifically ones that are going to be troublesome areas that have a lot of weird scripting or weird like escort quests, or they function weird with higher populations. Either those specific areas you would focus like a lot on, to try and be like, all right, say if we give everyone templated characters that start off at this level, let's just have them go into the zone, see what happens. Or say, they try to do a stress test of, let's let everyone go just in like one area and see what happens. Just to kind of play with it.
That's what I would like to see.
I would prefer shorter tests, but with more deliberate reasons behind the test that are a little bit more transparent. Rather than a longer one, because then if you're doing the longer one, it burns out your hype, because your hype is already so high. You're like, oh, I'm in this and it's real. But if you're only having shorter tests, you're not getting as fulfilled by playing the game essentially already. It's kind of the ongoing battle you have with beta testing something versus waiting for a launch, figuring it out. How do you balance that hype level? And that's going to be something they're probably even talking about right now, leading all the way up until what they decide to do. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I totally agree. So let me ask you this: if you had to guess, what do you think is the next big piece of Classic news that we get? Do you think it's another water cooler dev talk? Do you think it's a release date announcement? Do you think it's a beta or alpha announcement? What do you think is on the horizon? And I guess timeline also.
So timeline, I honestly don't know, but I would say probably maybe in like a month-ish, we'll probably start seeing more. And this is me guessing at this point. I don't know what the strategy is. I have no idea. I am only working off of my guesses and my like expertise and kind of suggestions. If I wanted to see something happen, I would love to see more information probably in the next like month or so, and I would expect more piecemeal style answers rather than a huge like water cooler blog. Let's be real, piecemeal. We're getting more bits a little bit quicker. I would prefer that, at least because we're getting more of a glimpse into the progress rather than philosophy, because we know philosophy, we know how diehard and gung-ho they are with a lot of this stuff. I'd love to hear more of philosophy in action, that kind of thing. Say, how are you approaching, and this is a really good kind of philosophical question that we had on at least on the community team, is What is say the mount system for you in vanilla? When you think of the mount system, what do you think of?
Right.
Do you think of the 112 version, or do you think of the one? Is it 1.8 or 110? When it used to have writing for each city, and so you had to get exalted to earn the writing for the cities. It's like, what's you
So
understand?
I'm pretty sure that's
Which
how
one?
it was for 90% of vanilla WoW. Like
Mhm.
90% of vanilla WoW, the mount system worked in a way that we don't think of as being the mount system. It
Correct.
changed to what we think of it as being in 1.12 or 1.11. And then up until 1.4, they had the unarmored epic mounts. Are we going to have unarmored epic mounts? I think that'd be badass for the first 4 or 5 months. That'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so if you get your epic mount before, let's say 1.3, I think it was, whenever they put in the armored epic mounts. Yeah, I think it's cool. I think it's just like a cool like little thing that you have that you can flex on people with. Like, yeah, I got my epic mount early, you know.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think it'd be cool to start hearing bits of information like that with say systems that you have a vanilla perception of in your mind of what that system is, but say it changed at some point in vanilla, and it's like, which one is the correct one? And I think those are kind of interesting, because we all, in our mind, when you look back and think of vanilla, you probably spent the most time in say 110 to the end, and so say the mount system, for example, when it changed, you may remember that system, but the majority of vanilla you actually spent using another system. It's like, which one is the right one?
Yeah.
Those kinds of, I would love to hear more of those kinds of things. That goes even with talents. Are you going to go straight with 112 talents, or are you going to take like little pieces of them from previous patches? Like, how is that going to work exactly? Like, I would love more of those little things of being like, this is what we're doing and this is why, and getting kind of the understanding of this is why, the direction that it's going, that kind of thing.
Right. I think I know for me personally,
Tier sets is a great example as well. Like, what patch do you go with tier sets that changed so quickly?
Right. Like, as far as like how the itemization changes and whatnot. Yeah, I think as far as the mount system goes, so for those of you guys who don't know, original mount system was you paid very little for the training, and then you would pay a lot for the mount. Like, it was a little bit more role play oriented, and that's something that you kind of see throughout the course of WoW.
Just to add one more piece onto that, there was Mechanostrider training, there was Ram training, there was Wolf training, there was Raptor training. There wasn't just Journeyman training or whatever, right? There were unique. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that was good. That was really good. So yeah, it was a lot more like role play. Like, I mean, it was, I mean, you even look back on, in the alpha, whenever Taurens didn't have mounts and they eventually gave them Kodos, they said, oh, well, the Taurens, they have planes running or whatever. Planes, I forgot what it was exactly called. I think it was planes running. But it was a lot more roleplay oriented, and slowly throughout the course of vanilla and really throughout the course of the entirety of WoW, it's kind of deviated away from more of the roleplay aspect of it. So it was, okay, early on, you get training for a specific type of mount, like you said, Mechanostrider, whatever, and it's very cheap, but then you pay a lot for, you know, a nice epic horse, or like a very like advanced Mechanostrider. Like, that makes more sense from a roleplay perspective, right? To pay a lot for something like that, and the training's not that big of a deal. But then it flipped, because they're like, okay, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, because what happens is people want to, they get their training and then they want to have multiple mounts. So I don't know. That's why I think that they changed it. At least it makes more sense that way from like a gameplay perspective, but kind of deviating from that roleplay aspect.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was really cool, and I hope that that's how they have it, because it, you know, those small accomplishments that you have to work towards, and you only can like, if you see a gnome on a lightsaber, that's like, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
So it's just cool. It's just like another little flavor thing.
It's another level of character progression to earn say, and you needed the reputation for that city to be exalted to even learn the writing of a city that you weren't from. So you had to actually kind of bust your ass to go get, say, you know, lightsaber riding on a gnome. Like, that was difficult. It took some time.
Yeah. When they were coming up these kind of philosophical questions and answers, do you know if they were referencing, you know, possibly private server precedents, like private servers that already done this before? The Stalrius, for example, did the team kind of look at that and say, okay, this is how these guys did it, they had some success, maybe this is a good starting point to talk about? Or was it kind of done from scratch?
So I wasn't really a part of any of those conversations, but I would assume that they looked at some of that information. I mean, it makes sense that they would. I just don't know, but I'm assuming that they definitely did, because why would you pass up on a lot of data that players already figured out, that kind of thing. Why would you pass on all this information that's already there? I mean, the Nostalrius guys, they delivered like, all of their data and information to Blizzard to kind of show like, this is why this is viable. This is all the stuff that we saw. It's crazy to assume that none of that was referenced or used.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah, so I guess this is like maybe a weird question. Within like because there's like the big WoW development team, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does the main WoW development team sort of perceive classic WoW? Is everyone excited for it, or if they're not directly working on it, are they sort of ambivalent, or what's like the general vibe with people that aren't actually putting their hands on it?
They're pretty excited about the project. Like, in all
Really?
honesty, they're pretty excited about it, because it's another level of like kind of professional nerddom where you're seeing these guys accomplish something that everyone thought you couldn't really do or couldn't really figure out a way to do based on what we had, and they're working it out, and it's kind of adorable to see all these guys who are just kind of giddy at seeing how they're accomplishing all of these problems, because that's all development really, a lot of development really is how do you come up with a solution to this problem of something that you're trying to do. And so it's interesting seeing where everyone's head's at, and they're trying to solve these problems. So they're fascinated with the project, and then most of the people who also want to play it, they're very excited about seeing the progress and hearing about it too. Like, there was a meeting at one point where someone in leadership asked how who here is excited to play Classic, and keep in mind this is like a WoW meeting. Everyone raised their hands. Like, everyone raised their hands because everyone wants to try this out and play this. Like,
Yeah.
It's very much a hype thing internally, where at least anyone who's associated to WoW is pretty excited about it. There's some people, of course, that they're not too keen on it. They just like the retail game, and they're like, I did that already, and that's understandable. But the people who are excited about it are very passionate about it.
Has there been conversation from anybody on the team, even in passing, just like joking around, about potentially continuing beyond Classic into Burning Crusade and possibly even Wrath?
I have heard no conversation of that, like business-wise, but it's like a conversation of, wouldn't this be really cool to kind of see? And I 100% on board. I would be more excited to play TBC if I knew TBC was going to be a thing, than I would be for Classic, in all honesty, just because TBC was the expansion where I fell in love with the game and really kind of came into my own. But I was still...
Sounds about right.
I would love to play through that again, because I never got to experience really hitting cap in vanilla and experiencing the content, and then going from vanilla to BC.
Yeah. Well, it sounds about right for, Blood Elf Ret Paladin to like Burning Crusade so much.
Yeah, a little bit.
No, I don't know. If Burning Crusade comes out, I might end up playing a Blood Elf in Burning Crusade, because I was the highest ranked Alliance Ret Paladin in our battle group in arenas in 5v5, and it was like me, and then there was 2 Blood Elves ahead of me. It's at least like at the time that I was playing, and then I stopped, but 2. And then it was just the entire page on the ladder was Blood Elves, and there was like some dwarves sprinkled in, dwarves and humans sprinkled into the bottom. But yeah, there was I'm still a little bit salty. It's only been 10 years. I'm still getting over it. Okay. but yeah, no, go ahead, say about you're telling a question. Or you asking a question?
I was gonna say, yeah, you play a Blood Elf Ret Pally. So in Vanilla Classic, what are you gonna do? Where are you gonna be?
I think so far it sounds like I'm gonna be a human paladin.
Very good.
It sounds like I'm a human paladin. I've talked to you guys. I think I'm probably going to end up playing with S-Fan and everybody.
There you go. Cool. You'll be on the
disgusting.
man.
Disgusting,
man.
Man.
I think I'm going to be a human paladin. And then if my horde character is probably going to be an undead rogue. So
nice. There you go.
I don't get paladins on horde, but hey, I'll play as a rogue at least. That's what I played back in vanilla anyway. So why not?
It's funny that you say that, because I always say that if I didn't play Paladin, I would play a Rogue now, because I've been playing retail WoW so much that I've gotten used to combo points. Yep. So I was like, I could probably play a Rogue just fine now. But yeah, it's funny how that works.
Managing Inquisition is like the same thing as managing, say, Slice and Dice.
Right. So I think, I mean, that'd be great. So we're planning on playing on a PvP server. We want to play on our server together, where Stay Safe and I are going to go Alliance, Tips is going to go Horde, with Crom and some other friends.
And we will each have our own guild. So S-Fun will have a guild, Tips out will have a guild on the Horde, S-Fun's Alliance, right? And then I'll have my own guild on Alliance as well. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And you guys have actually already started your guild applications. right?
Taking
Both of
names.
you guys.
Yep.
Yeah, both of you guys
Yeah,
have started your guild applications. I have not started yet. I'm gonna get going on that stuff sometime soon. My general thought was I don't really want to get into it too much until there's another testing period out, but it's been I was expecting it a lot sooner. I was expecting it this month at the latest initially. After BlizzCon, I thought it would be no later than February, but here we are. So I might get going on that stuff too. And I know a lot of people, especially from my old guild, have been messaging me, especially with like the like joining Method and stuff. Like my Method jacket on today, don't I?
You get the jacket, but you don't get the chair.
Yeah, I have. Hey. Let's go. Where you at, dude?
Put a Method sticker on it.
Yeah, I know exactly. So no, yeah, I especially with joining Method, a lot of people are like, so are you still kind of doing the same thing? And my current plan is still to kind of like have my same guild instead of running like a Method Classic or something, because I'm the first like Method Classic, I guess, signee.
S-Fan, I do plan on playing Holy, by the way. I'll pocket heal you.
Very good. I like that. I like the sound of that. That's all paladins should be holy except for me. I can be red. I'm a special snowflake. No.
Just help me get my cleanse librum and my flash of light librum. I'm good.
Yeah, then you're good. You're good.
Freaking alliance, dude.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be good, dude. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So you know, as far as that goes, like, you know, we know you're gonna play Alliance now. Good choice. You're gonna play Paladin. Another good choice. You're gonna play with us. Good choice. Do you think kind of you said you started playing towards the end of vanilla, and then you got into it in Burning Crusade, but you didn't like, I guess, really like hit your, because you obviously like you didn't like hit your full stride in vanilla. What is the thing that you personally are most excited about? Like a certain thing. Is there a certain raid or anything specific that you didn't get to do in vanilla that you really want to go through and you want to accomplish? If so, what is that?
Doing the actual Blackrock dungeons.
Oh yeah,
I never got to experience doing Blackrock dungeons.
These
so
are the best ones.
I really want to do those, and the same with Molten Core as well.
Yeah.
I never saw Molten Core until we were already in Burning Crusade. So my first time seeing Ragnaros, I could just one shot him. So I was like, "This is what's the big deal about this thing?" I never got to experience something like Raggy, or say the living bombs. I want to do all of that stuff because I just never saw it. I never could see it. I think I hit like it was somewhere between 40 to 50 was like the level that I actually hit in vanilla before BC launched. So I never got to I just never got to see any of that content.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people like that, and I think that actually it's funny. You're the example, or pretty close to the example that I give of a lot of people who are really excited about Classic, people who maybe started to play back then or started playing after Classic came out, and you want to go back and either experience it or just go finish, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people didn't get to finish. I mean, you might talk to some guys who, like a lot of the Method guys have been playing, like, you know, since vanilla. Some of them have, like Sko, for example. Like, people have seen the video, Sko and his mom, Sko and his Might of Menethil, where he's playing two-handed fury and just like smashing people. A lot of the guys who've been playing WoW for a long time, like they might have gone through and they might have completed all the content, and they might be supportive of vanilla, or they might be, you know, oh, this is cool. But as far as them personally like being excited to play it, it's like, well, I don't know if that's something that I want to do, right? Because hey, I've already done this.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, for example, like it's like what you're talking about with, say, finishing an expansion. So like I've finished every expansion, every single one, except for vanilla. I never got to go through the raid tiers of vanilla. That's the only one I never got to do. I did Sunwell, I did Arthas, like I've done all of these. I just never got to actually go into OG Naxxramas, Molten Core, or even Blackwing Lair. I just never got to do any of these.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be an awesome experience. Like, I know a lot of people say like, okay, it's not going to be the exact same, and that's true. Like, it's not going to be the exact same as it initially was, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be a really cool and really special experience, even for somebody who's already experienced it once before. I think Classic launch is going to be, I mean, it's going to be an experience for so many people that, like, dude, it's gonna be magical. I'm not trying to romanticize it, but it's
totally
gonna be something
right.
else. Yeah.
Classic WoW content is great. It'll probably differ a little bit from what it was in vanilla WoW, but I think Yithison said this. We were talking before we went live. You said the gameplay of Classic WoW is like the community or something like that. You said something to that effect, right? And it's so true. Like I was sitting here bored last night, and I was just thinking to myself, I want to go on an adventure with my friends, and like there's no game right now that gives me that adventure.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't scratch that itch. And so even if it is a little bit different here and there, it's going to be an adventure again. And that's the greatest thing about Classic WoW, if you ask me.
Absolutely. And like, I don't know, Yithisons, if you've ever played like a fresh server launch, but it's insane. Like it's an experience you can't replicate in any other game. And I was actually curious as to your predictions. How big do you think the launch is going to be? I mean, has it, crossed your mind like a figure like hundreds of thousands, millions possibly? How big do you think that launch is going to be?
See, this is interesting because this is where we get into the total speculation of kind of what you think it might fall into.
Yeah.
Um, I would expect to see definitely over like 1 million viewers on Twitch. Just given the caliber of people who want to play Classic and who I've talked to personally about Classic, like I would expect you to see over a million viewers on, say, Twitch on launch day.
Yep.
Now player wise is interesting. Of course, we know there's going to be a drop off. Like people are going to rush in, they're going to try it out. There's going to be a lot of people who never got to experience it but just want to check it out, and they might find out it's not for them. And I could see them, churning out pretty hard. I would probably expect maybe, and this is me just guessing, total guessing. I would guess that you would see maybe about 20% ish after like the first month or two that are still playing it based off of who played it on the launch day. And then it would just kind of fall from there, just because Classic is a very niche thing. Once you get farther along, I would still probably say on launch day you're going to see 1 million plus concurrents, most likely, given just the enthusiasm around the project. I would expect numbers in that range, and I'm curious if I can get anyone at Blizzard to tell me what it is after this happens, to see if I can like confirm my theories of how I believe that the community is going to behave when it comes to the project. Like we know like the diehards are going to be are going to make it successful, but it's kind of what does that success actually look like?
Right. Now 80% isn't something like most people hear that and like, oh, like that's a lot. And yeah, it is, but I think that pretty much follows in line with what several people, I know Nixium has said like what he thinks this will be a big spike. I actually completely agree with Nixium. Big spike, and then it's going to dip off pretty hard, because anytime anything is as hyped as Classic is hyped, and it's just anything, right? Anything that has that much hype behind it, it's going to have a huge spike at the beginning, and then it's going to have a pretty steep drop off because people are going to find out whether it's for them or not. But I think that it's going to hit that point and then kind of level out, and then maybe even start growing, and maybe in the same way that we saw old school RuneScape pan out. So I mean that's what I would hope for, and that's what I could totally see happening, because people might go try retail, go back to retail, and say, you know what, maybe I like Classic more, and then go back to Classic. I could totally see that happening, because it's just like two different games for, two different people. Like you got these people like this kind of game, these people like this kind of game, and there's some people in the middle that like both, and I think that's fine. People go in and they try and find out which one they like more, and then they can roll with it.
I expect like diehard players to alternate when they're playing retail versus Classic, based on the content waves that are probably planned for Classic. So we'll probably see like when a patch for WoW happens, people are going to rush in, play that, do the new raids, do the new content. When the new content for Classic comes in, you'll see people kind of, I guess the super diehard players will kind of swap to the other, do that one. That's honestly the behavior I probably am going to exhibit when it comes to Classic, just because I still love doing the new raids, doing the retail stuff. But I still want to play all the Classic content. Like, I'll go back and forth constantly. It's the only thing that's going to be awful is it's going to kill any time to play any other games. But
oh yeah. I mean, do you think that and this seems smart to me, I think that they'll probably do this. Do you think that they'll stagger Classic and retail WoW content releases?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They absolutely would do that.
See, I think that that's something that's probably not a good for Classic. I think because I think if you go and you purposefully try and, okay, if we have this come out in January for retail, and then this comes out in March for Classic, and then you just kind of go and you stagger them. Like, let's say you have a patch every 6 months, and then you put those 6 months and you stagger them to be every 3 months there's some sort of WoW content coming out. Like, I think that looks really good on paper, but the problem is that you're going off the assumption that the people who are playing Classic are going to want to play retail, and the people that are playing retail are going to want to play Classic. And sure, some people are, but you shouldn't use the other version of the game as supplementary content for the version of the game that people want to play, is the way that I see it. Specifically with,
I mean, I think there will be crossover.
There will be some,
maybe not a lot, but there definitely will be crossover. And I mean, let's say you have 5 months between Classic like content release phases. Why not just squeeze in, you know, it's like Classic WoW, Retail WoW, Classic WoW, Retail WoW content. That just makes sense to me. There's nothing wrong with that.
It makes sense. It makes sense from a business standpoint.
Yeah,
it's not necessarily going to be a purposeful decision, but it's something that's going to happen anyway. Just say
naturally.
Say with the pacing of say Classic content, you're going to have to do them probably like 5 months apart, somewhere in that range of a typical patch cycle, right? That you would expect for retail.
Right. That makes sense.
If that's naturally going to happen, why wouldn't you not just play into it to where it's going to fall that way anyway, rather than line things up?
Yeah, exactly.
Because then you're going to have a lot of players who are going to have a subpar experience because now they have to choose between one or the other, versus you could make potentially everyone happy anyway just by the way that it's naturally going to go.
Right. That's true. I agree with that. I guess what my point was more than anything is like going retail classic, as opposed to, because if you go with a more fleshed out approach to the patch release in Classic, you are going to have a time where you go like retail classic, retail classic, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It won't necessarily be alternating perfectly every single time, because in actual retail vanilla WoW, you had, I think like the Dire Maul patch came out, I think it was 3.5 months after launch. It was close to 4 months after launch. So it's like, and then even with between that, you had the Mardon patch come out like almost right after launch.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I was going to say. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, just to clarify real quick, because I saw chat freaking out. That month like time frame I threw out is totally just pulling a number out of my ass. That's not an actual thing. I saw people kind of freaking out a little bit. I was like, that 5 month thing, I'm just talking about it from the structure. See, everyone's relieved.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, now I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, here. Stay safe. You start talking, and I'll talk at the same time as you, and maybe I'll just kick it back in the game.
Oh, you know what? I remember what I was going to say.
There it is.
So, I just remembered. Yep. Like, so with Retail WoW, there are typically like 4 content phases in Retail WoW, like a Retail WoW expansion, right? That might have influenced why they wanted to do a 4-phase Classic WoW, so they could line it up, just alternate them, right? And if they they might have realized this is just not going to work for Classic WoW. We need to have 6 or 7 content phases. So it might not be as neat as Retail Classic. It might be something like Esfon said, where it's Retail Classic, you know what I mean? So yeah, but that might have been their original logic behind having 4 content phases, to match it up really nicely with Retail WoW. Who knows?
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. What do you think Yithesons is kind of like? This actually is more specific to the earnings call, but like talking about releases and stuff like that. One thing that I noticed during the earnings call was there was a line that was said that went something along the line of, they're not Activision Blizzard isn't planning any frontline releases in 2019. And off of that statement, there's been some speculation that Classic could be delayed, which led to, I think his name is Bornak, right? Or Bornak. Yeah. Bornak going on the forums and kind of saying, no, it is going to be releasing in 2019. Do people at Activision Blizzard look at this as kind of a smaller project? I mean, why wasn't it called a frontline release? Is it like a technical term in the industry? Like, do you?
Yeah, I know a lot of people were pretty like, wait, what? Like, I don't know if it was like a stockholder speak or whatever. I don't know. I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah, I can kind of touch on it a little bit because this is just me assuming where their mentality kind of lies viewing the product. It's very much that kind of an investor kind of speak when they're talking about frontline releases. Frontline releases is more of a way of describing a title that we're going to like sell in, say, a retail environment.
That's what I thought.
Like with something like Classic, we're probably not going to see it ever touch retail because it honestly doesn't need to. It's just going to be something like completely digital that you're getting with your regular WoW sub. There's
Do you
nothing
think
there's
this?
nothing to really sell there for investors to honestly care about, and it means a good thing for people who are the classic community as well. It means that the project is still being viewed as something that is going to be an accessory to WoW rather than its own thing to say be dictated by its own revenue, for example.
Do you think that there's a?
that it's kind
I'm
of
sorry.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just saying when we've talked about this amongst ourselves, do you think that there's a chance that they might put out like a collector's edition or anything with like its own, I don't know, non-combat pets, something similar to the original collector's edition, but maybe not quite the same? Is that something that could potentially happen as like a retail thing, or would that be like a digital purchase more than likely if they did that? I guess same thing. I guess.
I could see it probably being more of a digital thing if they were to do something along those lines. If I were to guess, it could honestly. I mean, I think it's a cool idea. There's a forum post a while back where I talked about this because someone asked, since they had purchased an original vanilla CE, would they be able to get their pets? And I had kind of explained more along the philosophy of linking the two of being, no, they should be totally separate.
I agree.
You should not, like, you still have those things that you bought before. These should be a totally separate thing. I can't really say whether one way is going to happen or the other, because to be honest, we haven't gotten there yet. It could happen where the classic team wants to do some awesome flavor thing and give those out. We don't know. It could be a scenario where if you had an original one, you have those, but then there's also a way to say get it just for classic. Don't know.
Right.
I think it would be cool to see because one, it would generate revenue for the project, which is good. If you're a classic fan, you want that because that means the project is making money and it's justifying the business justification for making it. You want that. You want that to happen. And something like selling a CE, that makes sense because it's something simple. It's not impacting the game. It's just making money for the thing that you love and you're trying to support, which is good. You want that to happen. I would hope it. I would kind of. It would be cool to get that. I would buy it. I'm not gonna get it free anymore, but I would buy that if that exists.
Yeah, I'd probably buy that. I think.
I absolutely would. Yep.
Yeah.
Even if it was physical, if it was digital, I don't care. I would buy it because it's going to be something related to classic, specifically supporting it. I would do that. Yeah.
Yeah. I've never been big on like. I'm not too big on like cosmetics. I'm not like a big mount farmer and stuff like that. Like. I say that, but I have a bunch of Kale skins on League of Legends, but it's different. I
bought the KDA skins immediately. I never bought a League skin before, but once KDA came out, bought them all.
Yeah. So like I mean, I'm not huge on like, getting cosmetics and stuff in the store. I know some people are interested in that. But I think I would get it just to like flex on people. Like I know that's one of those things, like if I had that now, if I had the collector's edition for vanilla now, like it's just drop it on the table, dude. Like,
well, yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, okay, if you meet someone today that's like, I played the vanilla WoW beta back in 2004, you're like, whoa. In the future, it's going to be demo. I played the BlizzCon demo. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole reason I use my BlizzCon bear, my big Blizzard bear. It's just because no one else has one.
Yeah, there you go.
I feel better about myself. I'm like, yeah, suck it. I got one.
Yeah. That's like I have one too, and it was given to me by a viewer. And like I said, I'm not real big on mounts, but there's certain things like that mount is like really awesome just because like nobody else has one. And the Baron mount is special to me because every single time that I had quit the game, I always wanted the Baron mount. And I've seen it drop before. I'd lost it. But every single time that I quit, I would come back and I would farm Baron. I would farm Strath Undead over and over and over again, and I would never see it drop. One day on stream, I was like, look, this is just one of the things that I need to do. I need to get this done. And I finally got them out and it was cool. Now, I think this drop rate has gone up like 100 times since Vanilla WoW. But still, it was cool that I finally got it. And hopefully I can get that in Classic because that would be cool.
Dude, I got the Baron mount on accident. A friend of mine during Wrath wanted me to help him like go through Strat and go for the mount. And I didn't care at all about mounts. And I still don't care about mounts today.
Yeah.
But he like disconnects like 5 minutes before Baron, and I just like sit there and I wait for him, and he like had this habit of disconnecting all the time because like he wasn't supposed to be playing late at night and his parents would come into his room and stuff like that. So I wait for like 10 minutes and I'm just like, he's not coming, whatever, I'll just finish this off and go. Frickin' drops. I pick it up. Literally 60 seconds or less later, he logs in. Sorry about that, dude. Let's go kill Baron. I'm just like, dude, riding the mountain.
Dude, why didn't you wait for him?
I waited like 10 minutes. I was like, he's not coming back, you know. And it was
Did you
just
delete that? Did
unbelievable.
you delete that mount too?
no. But I had to delete Mimiron's head.
Wait, was he still in your group? He was still in your group, right?
I can't remember. This was like ery Wrath, so I can't remember.
I wonder if loot trading was a thing, man. It might have been late Wrath.
It was,
loot trading.
it was late Wrath, yeah.
There you go, dude. Another reason. Don't put loot trading in. There you go. No, I think I don't know if it even would have worked if he was disconnected, but still, it's just funny to think about. Yeah. So, do you think we talked about Bornak a little bit? Mm-hmm. He mentioned in a post recently that the game's still, set to be released in 2019. Don't worry, there's no delays. Do you think that, do you think there's any chance that anything gets delayed? Like if Blizzard comes out and they say like, okay, we're aiming for this release date, they're going to get it by then after they announce it. I don't know. I don't know in recent, I just don't know. Like, have they announced anything before and delayed it? I know they've pulled it up. They pulled BFA up by about a month.
I'm pretty sure we've delayed stuff before, but it's usually when we don't tell you guys what the actual date is and say it slips, and it's something that's just not communicated, because it's just not ready yet.
Right.
I don't see that happening with Classic. I didn't hear of anything that indicated that it would be delayed whatsoever. But if it did, I would trust that call is coming from the Classic team actually asking for it to be pushed back because they're just not ready yet. If that were to happen. And I would welcome that because that's a sign that the Classic team is like saying, no, it's not ready. It's just not ready yet. And it happens. If that happens, if that does, I won't be mad. I'd be cool with it. I don't think it will though. It doesn't. I didn't hear of anything indicating that it would. So I hope
it takes as long as possible.
Yeah. If they need longer, please take it because this is a special thing. Like
I think we would all agree that hopefully it takes as long as possible. I mean, clearly, if it comes out sooner, like, as far as YouTube and Twitch and all that memery goes, like, it's better for our channels and whatnot because that's like what, that's what we really want to do and all that. But I would rather have the game be good than just get to do it now, like, just be patient.
Yep.
As Fan the Patient, that's my title.
And also today, just first impressions are very, very important, right? So if they release in, June and it's just not ready, it would have been better for it to release in September and have it be flawless, right? So that's what I prefer.
Yeah. Especially in a situation as delicate as Classics, where you do have, as much as we don't want to talk about it, there is this kind of competitor out there, the private servers and stuff like that. If Classic doesn't really stick at the start, it gives people that provide that service a lot more, I guess, clout and leeway to kind of provide the service for their audience and stuff. So, yeah, definitely, even if it has to get delayed, the better the product is at launch. I mean, I think the better for everyone at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I agree. We have, sorry, go if you have a follow-up to that.
Well, I was going to say, kind of talking about, Bornak and, smaller, like talking about like the like CM team, right? Mm-hmm. And if there's a smaller CM team, GMs are the entire like appeal system, everything is like totally different in retail WoW now than it was, 14 years ago. What kind of impact do you think that could have on Classic by having like a smaller CM team, by having, by not having like a team of GM, like a fully fleshed out team of GMs like before, as far as like nothing being automated in the past compared to now?
Well, yeah, and that influences maybe why they wanted to add right-click reporting. So I guess that's what I was going to ask.
Oh, okay, yeah, so perfect.
Wait, sorry, what you cut out in the call for a second, so I couldn't hear what you said.
Talking about like having a smaller CM, GM, just moderation team in general as compared to the past, excuse me. And then like Stay Safe added in like, the potential of there being a right click report and all that. How do you feel about that? Like what kind of impact do you think that could have?
It's interesting from a player psychology perspective of seeing how the Classic community would respond to say like a right click report. I'm interested in seeing how they would behave with it.
Oh, it would be terrible, dude. We would be
notoriously terrible. Yeah. But it's interesting. I don't think there's necessarily really a concern with, say, GM staff. And it's more so of just something that say the modern client has that we use that does work and it's useful. Um, keep in mind, there's still a lot of stuff built into, say, the right-click reporting that tries to do the best it can to mitigate any sort of malicious use. And if players are maliciously reporting people, they do get suspended for that. That is something that is against the rules and will get it will get you in trouble. Most, I know a lot of the feedback is actually coming from players who say have seen like, one or two maybe YouTube videos about it or haven't played the retail game, but players who maliciously abuse any sort of reporting system or the GM staff to do any sort of nefarious things, like that'll get you in trouble. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Don't snitch.
It'll get you a longer suspension than what you were trying to give someone else. Just don't do that. There's good reason for the classic community to not be okay with that feature, and I understand that. I'm just kind of curious. I would love to see both worlds where one existed and one didn't, just to kind of see what the difference between the two would be.
I definitely think
psychology aspect to it.
Because like the social dynamics and just the meta of these two games is so different, a solution that was wise in retail WoW might not necessarily be, or I would say definitely would not be wise for classic WoW. It would require a different solution.
It could require a different solution. It could be the same program, but it functions totally differently on the back end. We don't know. I don't think that decision's even been made yet. It could be totally different to where, say, it doesn't actually do anything until Game Master actually reviews it, which is for the most case how the retail one works. Like nothing actually is done unless a Game Master actually gets reviewed. But say it's like a chat thing, someone will get, say, squelched. They won't get suspended or kicked out of the game. They'll get squelched, and then it'll get reviewed by a Game Master and then decided what to be done. The classic one is probably going to function somewhere in that lines if it does have that. Keep in mind, we still don't even know if Classic is going to have right-click reporting. That isn't something that's like communicated or concrete. It's something that could not even be happening, and we're being afraid of something that might not even exist. But it's interesting to think about, just of seeing how players would behave with that, seeing how the Classic community would behave with that system. Just to run like a cruel little experiment on all of them, just to be like, let's just turn it on to see what happens for like a week or two.
Right. Yeah. I think you would say that it's important. I know that's something that, the sky is falling. We have a tendency to do that.
A little bit.
a little bit. But do you still think it's important to express, like, properly express, like, this is something that, like, we don't want to see happen, right? The right-click report, and we've talked about loot trading, 4 phases, all that.
Absolutely.
I know.
The dev team sees that. The dev team will absolutely see that. If you guys are being very vocal on not wanting something like that, trust me, they're players just like you guys are. They some of these solutions that they have to propose sometimes they don't actually want, but it's the best solution to a problem that they have, and they probably don't even want it. Like, I could guarantee you, no one on the Classic team actually wants to have, say, sharding, for example, but they might have to have it at the beginning, because if it gets insane, like we are all expecting it to be, you're gonna have to have it. Kind of one of those worlds where this whole thing could just be a huge explosion. We kind of need to set at least some stuff up just in case. But it's something that they're monitoring discussions on and constantly evaluating on if this is the correct solution to the problem.
I really hope that there's like a stress test or something that's done, like maybe like a closed beta or closed stress testing period or something, where they let it roll, throw them out there. Let's just have everybody go in, no sharding, and just see what happens with 5,000 people in the world, right? Just see what happens. And then you do it again with sharding. I think that way you, first off, the team gets to see it. That's honestly, that's the most important thing. But also having that level of transparency and having so many other people, in the community getting to see it as well. Like, oh, okay, I see how this plays out. Or, oh, you know what? We don't need sharding at all. Like, this actually works out just fine.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess, like, as like sort of follow up to that question, what do you think the chances are that we don't have a beta or alpha and we only have like a couple 2-day stress tests or something like that? Do you think that's possible?
I think that would happen, but that would be like the worst case scenario for probably the game. I could see that potentially happening, of just like stress testing, but that's literally the worst case scenario, and I'm pretty sure that team does not want that kind of thing. It's good data for a stress test, but it's not good enough data for, say, how the zones are functioning or how the scripting is working. That's not enough to work on.
Yeah.
it could be they like open up a zone for a day. That's something that could be a potential where it's like, hey, let's take the concept of shorter tests, but let's just be like, all right, on this between this time and this time, uh, say Westfall is going to be enabled. Everyone starts with a templated character, go, and you do the zone. Or a couple days later, it's like, all right, Westfall works. We fixed some things that were a problem. Everyone now do Stone Talon Mountains. Let's see how this works. Do the same thing for Darkshore. Can you go down the list of zones that you feel might be a problem? I could see that happening of like short-term bursts, but very specific on what they need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this obviously happens hopefully before Classic launches. But I wanted to ask you after Classic launches, has that ever been communicated that there's a plan to sort of monitor how the game is being played after launch to see if anybody's exploiting anything, any old exploits or possibly new exploits that come out, as a result of a downport from the existing client? In particular, there's a couple of examples on private servers with regard to like gold farming. Dire Mall East gold farming, it's a very, very profitable business, stuff like that. Will there be a team to kind of monitor what's going on with the game after it releases and potentially adjust any exploits or bugs that might, be a byproduct of the client downporting?
I'm pretty sure that will be taken care of, and I kind of know some details. That's going to be stuff that you never hear the information about. But pretty sure that will be covered and people will be watching.
Okay.
That should be fine. That's going to be really easy stuff because luckily for, in this case, say Classic, since it's running on, say, the skeleton of the modern game, a lot of the advances and stuff and processes that they have for say people doing exploiting, they're going to have some of that power. So I wouldn't expect a problem. People are still probably going to bot. You can't stop that for permanently.
Mm-hmm.
However, you can ban it swiftly and harshly.
Mm-hmm.
And just deal with it as it pops up. Gold selling, yeah, same thing. It'd be the same thing. I would expect it to be treated the same way like the live game is. I can't foresee really any difference. And keep in mind, this is all conversations that aren't even happening yet, I don't think. But I would expect that to be covered.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't see any issue at all with that being taken care of. I did want to ask you guys a question that I if I've missed this on a ClassiCast, I'm sorry. What do you guys think about since it's using, like, say the demo, for example, used, say, the 7.3 client, right? And it's using a lot of that, but it's repurposing all the data for Classic. Since it's using those older client or the current clients and the current, say, APIs, how do you think that's going to impact, say, add-ons, for example? See, this is something I've been really fascinated on lately, and leading up to me, of course, being laid off now, not being able to participate in this conversation internally. But I was very curious on what you guys think, because there's a world where, say, some of the crazy add-ons that exist in retail could work in Classic, or players will figure out how to get them to work in Classic because you're using, say, the modern client. So you might see an add-on, say, particularly like weak auras, for example, exist in Classic, or or like something like LVUI existing in Classic, because you would have a way to create those in there because you're using all of the modern stuff. Like, this is just something to talk about.
Yeah. So that's how it was on the demo. It was using the 7.3.5 API, right? From what I understand, and I don't know a ton about add-ons, but from what I understand, the vanilla WoW API was actually much more open-ended. You could do a lot more than you can do on the modern API. And so my concern would be that things would be too open-ended, and you could do a lot of memey stuff in vanilla WoW, and you've seen it on private servers. So my concern is that it would be too open-ended, not that you would have modern stuff being backported. That's actually a lesser concern for me, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's things that you could do in vanilla that are kind of crazy. Like, I know this was something that had to be fixed. Now, here's the thing. I don't know if this, because I didn't do this in retail vanilla, but I did do this on private server. I tested on private server and it worked, and then they had to go and they had to fix it, like, server side. There's something you could do where you could use, like, the on use effect of an ability or a trinket of a weapon or a trinket or something, and you could use I guess you would only use it on a weapon, right? Because it would only be useful in combat. You would do it, and then you would swap it to another weapon, and you would keep the buff. Whereas whenever you use something, whenever you use a trinket or a weapon or whatever that gives you a buff for however much period of time, it actually drops off of you whenever you equip something else. But there was something you could do with the like you could have a script that goes and you run it like with a macro, swaps it, and then you keep the buff like for an on use for a weapon or something, and then it doesn't work, or it does work and it wouldn't have worked normally. Such as like Gnomish Crowd Pummeler was like that, and then that's been fixed since then.
I mean, yeah, like regarding the question about add-ons, I definitely think there's a very high risk for some of the more modern add-ons to kind of creep their way into Classic, and I do think it's going to be a problem. I do think there has to be some kind of intervention. Obviously, there were add-ons during Vanilla, and there shouldn't be any restriction in terms of the ability to make add-ons. But I mean, there's a lot of things you could do that I think trivialize the Vanilla experience, and in some ways are just completely contradictory to what Vanilla was about.
Yeah,
add-ons like that, I do hope that Blizzard steps in and says, this add-on, no, like break the add-on in some way. This cannot be in the game.
Yeah, right.
You can create so many things. I mean, you talked about weak auras, like some kind of looking for dungeon or looking for group style tool could be created. Like a lot of things that could really destroy what Vanilla was about could come into the game via add-ons. And I hope something's done about it.
So I was going to say, am I misremembering? I feel like at BlizzCon, Ian, as Ghost has talked about this, he said if there were add-ons that make it into Classic,
I remember that too.
That just fundamentally undermine the Classic experience. They'll shut them down. He said something to that effect, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, I thought I remembered that too. So that's at least there's that, right? You have some security in that, I guess.
Yeah.
Now something like weak auras, weak auras as it is doesn't really work. It wouldn't really work in Classic because one of the big things in Classic is, if you guys remember, mages had detect magic, right? You can't see the opposing player's buffs. The only way that you could detect if somebody had something is if you had detect magic on them or if you actually saw them cast it. I think that's part of the gameplay. Like you could see their debuffs and whatnot, but as far as like their self buffs, you wouldn't have been able to see that. So in current WoW, you can see everything on the opposing player. So weak aura sees that, and then boom, here it is. It pops up. So I don't know. I don't think as long as that just like base functionality works the same way that it used to, something like weak auras, I don't think would be as big of a deal. I don't know. There's all kinds of add-ons right now, like deadly boss mods, whatever. Big wigs, stuff like that, that whenever a boss or somebody uses a certain ability, something pops up on your screen. So there's stuff like that already. Chronometer's another one. What's the CC one? The CC Watch is one, but what's the one I'm thinking of? Do you know?
Omni CC? Is that what you're thinking about?
Omni CC, yeah. Was Omni CC the vanilla one? Stay safe, do you remember? I think it was Omni CC.
I don't remember, no.
Yeah, there was one that I can't remember if it was, I think it was Omni CC. But yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff right now that kind of work in the similar vein as weak auras. But I think the weak auras functionality, as it is, wouldn't really work with vanilla, how vanilla works. So yeah, there's that.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Like, I would put a lot of faith in what Ian said about if there's something that just totally undermines how Classic WoW is supposed to be played, I would expect them to shut it down 100%. And there were add-ons in vanilla WoW and add-ons that maybe even people use on private servers right now that I would argue undermine Classic WoW gameplay. So we'll have to see. I mean, and they're going to have to determine that stuff on a very individual basis, and it's going to be very interesting how that plays out.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, guys, before we continue, we still got plenty of time left. Don't worry. But if you haven't yet, please, it's in the chat right now. ! Follow. If you haven't yet, please follow Sakar on Twitch. Yezins has been streaming on Twitch more recently. Caden, Sakar now. He's been streaming on Twitch. Please follow him, and please follow Stay Safe TV. Follow Tips Out, baby. Tips Out's going to be playing Horde. Stay Safe is going to be playing Alliance. We're going to have separate guilds. They've both started their guild applications, but we'll be playing on PvP servers. That's our plan. And so yeah, please go follow them. Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, all that stuff. It's right there in the chat. It's just their Twitch, but you can go to their pages and you can see all their other links, and of course it's on the screen as well. And also for me, You know, you can follow this channel if you want.
Make sure to follow SFan TV.
And invest, you know, twitchstocks.com, invest in SFan TV, all pump, no dump. Yeah, just pump it, dude. So yeah, no, plenty of that. So yeah, thank you guys for the follows. Really, we really do appreciate that. I mean, the amount of support you guys have given us since we've started doing this show, and the follows for, again, stay safe tips, everybody, and I know Yithicens has gotten, or Sakara has gotten plenty of support since, you know, everything went down a couple weeks ago, which has been really awesome to see, and it just kind of goes to show like how strong the classic WoW community is, and how you guys can like really rally behind somebody that you really support. So hearts in the chat for you guys for sure, 100%. Also, pretty soon we're going to do a Q&A. So if you guys want to tweet at us, you know, at SFan TV, tips out, baby, stay safe, Warlock, hashtag ClassiCast. We'll answer some tweets. We'll look at Twitter. We'll also take some questions from chat as well. Is there anything else you guys want to hit on? I actually have one question that was already asked that we can get to. If you guys don't have anything else that you guys want to hit on, right? Or if you guys,
I'm ready for Q&A.
You ready?
Yep,
I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, Billy ready. This is from Anime Weed. He says, this is a question for everyone. I wanted to know your own personal decisions for content, etc., and what you would do with Classic WoW if Blizzard hired you as the lead director of Classic WoW's development pre-release, during live release, and beyond. Wow, that's a big question.
So that's like two questions, right? Wait, is he talking about our streaming / YouTube content? And then also what we would do if we were the head of the Classic WoW team? So two questions?
Yeah, two questions, basically.
Okay.
Do you want to start, Stay Safe?
Yeah, sure. Like one thing I'm really looking forward to doing with Classic WoW is, and I did this when I was playing on undocumented servers, and people really like this. I think I did 2 of these videos back in the day. I did sort of like account update videos. So maybe I think once a week with Classic WoW, I want to do like account update videos and talk about, okay, this is where I'm at on this character. These are my professions. These are my reputations. This is the progress I've made since the last video. And I'll talk about all the alts I have. And people really like those. I think there's a lot of people that... So I'm going to be playing Classic WoW at a super, super no life level. And I think people are going to want to follow that journey. And they'll be invested in sort of my journey, even though they can't play it, even though they can't know life to the same extent. So I'll sort of like try to bring them along. People really like that when I was doing that on private servers. So that's one thing I'm really eager to do.
I think I'm in the same boat as that, actually. I saw some like old, like I didn't play OSRS, but I saw like some old school RuneScape videos where I saw people were doing that, and I thought that was like a really good idea, and people seem to enjoy that, and they seem to be like personally invested in the stream and the progression of your character. Like whenever I was streaming, like I remember it was like, oh, like is SFan finally going to get a Bone Reaver's Edge this week? You know, is I've Sulfurous going to drop? And people would go, and I remember like when we're doing RAG, like my views would spike every week, right? Because people would maybe tune in and out and like just kind of, oh, like where are they this? And all of a sudden you would have like a 50, 100 viewer spike whenever you're killing Ragnaros, because one, people want to see the fight. They want to see if I would die, because I would die almost every week because I'm just Pepe guy, I guess. I don't know. Nobody would heal me. It's their fault. So, you
can heal yourself.
Listen, you're a rep paladin.
No, I don't have
where it is.
I have too many abilities on my hotbar to be able to make room for heals. Okay, as a rep paladin, it's very hard. Just don't worry about it. So yeah, no, like my views would spike because they were like, "Is he gonna get it? Is he gonna drop this week?" So yeah, I mean, stuff like that. I think people get like genuinely invested. I remember one of the biggest memes on the server was I would just be in MC and people would just link items, not in my guild, people that I might not even know, and we would be in world chat. And it'd be Gratz S-Fan Breastplate of Might. I can't even use the item. Like, I can't even use the thing. Gratz S-Fan Thunder Fury Whispers. Did you get it? Did you get it? I remember whenever I first got my Spinal Reaper, like in my first epic weapon that I actually got, it was like the coolest experience. And just seeing how many people on the server were like so excited that I finally got a rag weapon, right? It wasn't a BRE, but it was a Spinal Reaper. And like I remember sitting in Ironforge, I was on the step and just everybody was coming around waving at me. People were sending me whispers, congrats, man, super excited for you, all this stuff. And seeing that like level of community, like there's so many memes and stuff that comes out of it where it's like, oh, Gratz S-Fan just became a meme on the server because it was like, oh, Rep Prio and all this stuff. And I got the Onslaught Girdle. But I like kind of look back on that, and it was a very fond memory I have of how excited people were and like supportive of like, oh, the guy, like he finally got the weapon. So it was pretty cool. And I would like to do a lot of like character updates, stuff like that. And very similar with my streams, like raid streams, PvP streams. One of my things that I used to do, and one of the things that I would aim for on my old streams was if I'm streaming vanilla WoW, and I think this is why my channel grew so fast, is every stream something was happening, something was being accomplished, there was a goal, and that's not really the case with a lot of like retail WoW streams right now. It's a lot of more like chill, hang out. Maybe you might be doing something, maybe you might not be, but it's just like having like a good time, right? Whereas, hold on, sorry, I don't know what that happened. Whereas on my vanilla streams, it was like, oh, we're doing Paladin Police Force, we're doing we're doing Blackwing Lair, we're doing MC. So yeah, I think stuff like that is really cool. So yeah, that's kind of it for me. Tips, you want to go ahead?
I mean, I'm going to be making a lot of videos of me ganking these fine gentlemen surrounding me right here.
I'm sure with
videos.
Even numbers, right, Tips? I'm sure with even numbers.
Dude, absolutely.
Yeah, we'll see.
Plenty of 1v3s, of course. And continuing the guides that I'm working on right now, just, whatever guides I don't finish before Classic, I'll just continue those after Classic as well. But yeah, I mean, I like the idea of doing the journey update thing that these gentlemen are talking about. We'll see how I end up doing it. It might not be VODs. It might be kind of cut it up bits and pieces, something along those lines. But the reality is once Classic launches, it's going to be so hard to make videos that require a lot of effort. So we'll see what happens, but definitely going to be streaming a lot more than making videos, but we'll see.
Yeah. And I mean, you've talked about this a little bit, Sakar, like how much like you're streaming, or like if you you are looking for a job as well, and you're trying to kind of find out like the best option for yourself. What do you foresee happening as far as if you were to be streaming full time or if you were to be working?
So I've pretty much decided that if I go wherever I go to work, I'm probably going to continue streaming. So I'm probably going to keep up with that just because it's been so fun. I'd like to kind of continue this. I mean, I've seen what all comes from this kind of thing. It's fun hanging out with you guys and getting to do things like this. So I want to keep doing that. So really, I plan on just kind of doing like just regular kind of streaming of going through Classic, and people would get to kind of see me get to experience the content that I never got to experience whenever it was live. So at least for me, I'm going to be giddy the entire time because I haven't played any private servers. I haven't actually done any of the content, so I never got to actually experience any of it. So it'll be my first time going through a lot of it, at least dungeon wise. I think the only dungeon I ever really did in Classic was Dead Mines, and that was it. Yeah. So that'll be a new experience for me, getting to see all that stuff. Work wise, who knows where I'm gonna be at the moment. But we'll see. We'll see what comes there.
There you go. And then kind of to follow up with that, and before we take some more questions, and again, guys, tweet at us, #ClassiCast, give us a follow on Twitter, and we'll be looking at more questions from Twitter. But also, like, kind of to the second part of that question was, if we were lead director of WoW, right? Like, what direction would we like to take, or lead director of like Classic WoW? Like, what direction would we want to take Classic in? Do one of you guys want to start, or I'll go ahead and start actually. So, for me, like the way I see it, I think that it's on the right path, right? They want to go through and they want to release Classic. I think that there's certain things that they should definitely not be there. Like loot trading should probably definitely not be there. I think that a fair compromise would be to, if they absolutely feel like they have to have loot trading, I think a fair compromise would be that it's only active whenever you're in a raid environment and you have master loot selected. But if you're doing group loot or need before greed, round robin, all that stuff, then there's no loot trading in that situation. It needs to be scaled back a lot. I don't want to see right click report. I don't want to see people get muted in chat. That's like the most. I actually don't type in trade chat in retail WoW that often, because if I type 3 messages within like 10 or 15 seconds, I don't know what it is, it mutes me and I can't talk anymore. And then by the time that it's unmuted, I'm like, okay, I don't even care to talk. So like that's another thing that I think a lot of people would really like. I would just kill social interaction on the server. So there's like those things that I would take out. But talking about playing or how Classic is going to play out beyond, I would really like to see Burning Crusade. I would like to see Wrath. I think that right now that's all that most people will want to see. But by the time we finish Wrath, it's going to be 5-6 years down the road, and I don't know. There's going to be people at that point that are nostalgic about Cataclysm and MoP even. And whereas I personally am not, and I don't think I will be, I think there's going to be other people that are. And I'd be very curious to see how that ends up playing out. But for me personally, I think just like the first 3 makes the most sense.
Oh, you're a paladin.
Dance game.
You'd love MoP. You'd love MoP. You're a paladin.
I heard it was pretty good. Yeah, McConnell loved it from what I understand.
Sort of piggybacking off of that, I like if I were the director of WoW, honestly, was it the director of Blizzard or the director of WoW?
Just like you're basically lead director of Classic WoW.
Lead director of Classic WoW. Okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, to be honest, and this is a lot of credit to the current Classic WoW dev team. I think they're on the right track for about for the vast majority of the game. I think again the only things I would probably change is right click to report. I would either remove the feature entirely or alter it to the point where the automation doesn't trigger or triggers in far less cases. And loot sharing, I would just remove that, and then sharding, just remove that, and then
just get rid of it, dude.
You just get rid of it, dude. Just get rid of it. But everything else I think is on the right track, and I think that's really, really good when you take into account just how many things they could have changed and how many small adjustments they could have made. And you compare that to what we got at BlizzCon and the philosophy at BlizzCon. Like I was pleasantly surprised to see that, the team themselves have a very good row of heads on their shoulders. And I think it's going to be fine at the end of the day. So more or less what they're doing now with some small changes here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I genuinely have a lot of faith in the Classic dev team. I really think that they're trying to recreate Classic WoW as authentically as they possibly can. I think they're going to make the right decisions. If I was in charge of one change I would make, and I understand that if Classic devs are taking time so my change would be more communication. I understand if Classic devs are taking time to communicate with us more often, that's less time they have to develop the game, right? I get that. I would find someone super passionate, like Sakar here. Anyone, just bring him in and sit him behind your chair as you're developing Classic WoW, and you can verbally dictate things to him. Hey, let's share this. You don't even have to really take your eyes off the screen as you're developing. You can just be like, hey, let's share this. This is a cool thing. They might be interested. Stuff like that. He can spend a couple weeks gathering some stuff and then display it to the players. I think communication is very, very important, and I think that's one thing that Hightail, actually, we were talking about Hightail earlier. Hightail is doing so well with developing their upcoming game. Every week, several blog posts, screenshots, just snippets. It's not even anything of crazy substance. It's just like, hey, we're working, and here's just like a little tiny thing we've done in the last week. Stuff like that. It's so cool, and I know for a fact there are so many people that want to be brought along for that trip. I think that would be great.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know, Caden, do you actually, you know what? This will actually go well into another question. Kind of like we'll two-part this for you. What are your thoughts on content beyond Nax? This is from Fellerin. Content beyond Nax, if they didn't just go to TBC, what would you want to see? Like, let's say you were in charge. Like, let's say there's content beyond Nax. Would you like to see that, or would you just want to go straight to TBC? And if so, what would you like to see?
I would like the choice. So I'm very much a fan of giving the player choice in this scenario of if you go down the TBC route, you have the option to copy your character onto, say, the TBC server and start TBC off, but you retain your character and its data on the Classic server. And if you want to kind of try out, say, some new content that they have, basically, if they're getting into this world of Classic and remembering what vanilla was like, I would love for the opportunity to kind of see that as well. See it, one, if they could create stuff that would be true to vanilla as much as it could be, or even trying to use the old ideas that they had that they never got to do, and somehow manage to implement them within vanilla. Seeing if they could take those ideas and kind of, in a modern sense, can we pull this off? That kind of thing. I'm pretty sure John Stats kind of talked a lot about some of their ideas from back then that they had, but they never had the bandwidth to actually do. In this case, seeing if they could do that. But it gives you the choice for both. If you want to go to TBC, sweet, you can go, but you're not penalized if you want to also experience this kind of shot in the dark of new content.
That's something I agree with that too. Like just the concept of being able to like character copy to a Burning Crusade Fresh server. Like you can either level from scratch or you can copy a character over, and then you maybe have like holding servers, stasis servers, and where they stay on 1.12 forever, and basically you can just stay there and play that, and then over time, like sure, that might dwindle and there might be fresh servers that open up, because it ends up being this big spider web that I could draw out, where basically like, okay, you have Burning Crusade, you have Classic Fresh, you have the server that's still here, and then you have holding servers, and over time, you know, some people just want to play 1.12 forever. Like there's people that just genuinely did not want vanilla WoW to end, and they wanted to finish, they wanted to farm Nax. Nax had come out, Burning Crusade was coming out, and they still hadn't even finished AQ40. Like there's still so much time to, or there's still so much content to be done and not enough time to do it before you basically had the concept of forced progression placed on you. And that's something that, you know, happens in like every MMO or anything that there's like an expansion pack or something that gets put out. That's something that you have to deal with. But I think having the ability to copy over and then maybe eventually like, you know, these people that just want to play 1.12 forever across like maybe 10, 20 servers, which might be, let's say 5,000 server cap, dwindles down to an average of like, you know, 500 people online all the time. Then, okay, now we can take these 10 servers and merge them into one onto this holding server, which is 1.12 forever. And you have all these communities coming together, and these are all people that are about the same thing, just playing 1.12 forever. And you could still level a character there fresh and all kinds of stuff. I think it's kind of confusing to talk about. I might make a video about that where I kind of explain like what I think could happen. Now, I don't know if that's like a good business decision or not. I think it would be, right? You give players the option, and you give people more ways to play the game that they want to play. But
I think these discussions we're not talking like, we're talking a hypothetical where business wise it doesn't matter. Right. It's kind of like what our dream would be, and that's kind of where I'm in the same mentality where that's why I said it'd be cool to have the opportunity to copy a character to say if TBC does exist, you copy that character to TBC, but you still maintain your classic character, which allows you, if you want to still do that, you can keep doing that forever. It's still there. You're not penalized just for going to new content or the next level of content. It's not new, but it's the next content.
This is another question from Tribe. He says, what are your personal thoughts on progressive itemization?
It is a beast of a topic that doesn't have an easy answer. It's a complicated one. I've read a ton of Reddit posts, a bunch of forum posts, where it kind of examines the different phases of, say, sort of items depending on the patch. It's complicated. I wish I even had an opinion on where it should fall.
Right.
Because what's weird is you're going to be in scenarios where, say, if it runs with the 1.12 version of items that say are very strong, way stronger than say like the 1.5, but the content you're doing is even before 1.5. It feels weird to do things with gear that's stronger later on than it was whenever you're actually doing it in its current. I honestly don't know what to do about that. That's a complicated question, say team wise. I would love for them to figure out a way where progressive itemization is say snapshotted to the time frame of the content that you're experiencing. That may not be easily achievable, because then you're going to have to work with multiple versions of items. Say if say if the first set of the 4 content waves that they're talking about, say if the items versions are whatever they were before, I don't know, say 1.4, you're going to have to deal with those versions, and then say we go to the next one when it's like, all right, let's everything between 4 and 1.6, we run with those versions. It's complicated.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work being added onto it, and I don't think the team has an easy solution on this one, and they're probably stressed figuring out how to solve that. They could go with 112 and just call it a day, but it doesn't feel good to do that content with gear that got buffed, and so you're stronger than what that content actually was intended for you to be at. It kind of takes a little bit away, and it really makes it to where the only real content that you're experiencing at its current difficulty would have been Naxxramas, and it's going to take you forever to get to that point. It's going to trivialize a lot of the content beforehand.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible to have true 100% vanilla WoW authentic progressive itemization. I mean, there were items that changed, not even with big patches. They just changed on a random Tuesday. It was like a hot fix kind of deal. There were so many item changes just randomly. You guys don't even like. I don't know about them. You don't know about them. They're just lost to time. I don't even know if the classic devs know about them. Just so many stupid little things changed. It's impossible to recreate down to a T. Yeah. Now, I think you have to find a middle ground, because I don't think running off 1.12 is the right answer for the reasons that you just said. It trivializes content. I don't think that's the right solution either. I think a really good middle ground is, let's say they end up having 6 content phases. I would hope that each one of those would also be an itemization phase. So kind of like you were saying, 6 content phases. Each time the content phases, there's also an itemization phase. And maybe even before each new content/itemization phase, the weeks leading up to that, they release a list. Okay, in 3 weeks, when the new content/itemization phase happens, this is a list of every item that's going to change and how it's going to change. I would love that. That's I think, a pretty good middle ground.
I think that progressive itemization has several parts to it, right? There's when items are put into the game, when items are changed, and also when items are taken out of the game. There's some stuff that gets taken out, right? I think that the most important thing that needs to be addressed is when items get put into the game. Even on private servers, like, there hasn't been 100% progressive itemization, or like, let's say Nost, for example, right? Nostalrius released the tier 2 gear and Blackwing Lair with like the 1.9 reworks. It was basically like the newest version of the gear in the 1.6 patch, whereas it should have been put in the 1.9 patch. I think that's less of a problem than, let's say, Titanic leggings being put in the game from the very beginning, right? Than other items that are really good being put in place from the beginning. Onslaught Girdle being in at launch, right? The Flame Guard Gauntlet, stuff like that. Quick Strike Ring. I think progressive itemization should be looked at in at least two separate facets, right? Whereas, like, okay, well, these things change, and if you're looking at different versions of items, maybe that's something that's going to be a little bit harder and like a separate like project to tackle. But as far as like when the items are actually physically put into the game, put into the loot tables, I think that absolutely needs to be done properly. Yeah, so that's kind of what I think.
I think most people would agree there needs to be progressive itemization to some extent. Like, the argument is, to what extent, right? What's the frequency? But I think we're all pretty much like on the same phase, or same page. I mean, hopefully there are multiple phases. Multiple phases. Same
more
page.
phases. More phases. One page. Yeah.
Wait, no
Exactly.
phasing. No phasing. We don't want
No phasing.
phasing.
Right,
Yeah,
no
no
phasing.
phasing.
No shorting either.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to make sure to clarify that. That's a complicated thing to solve, and I hope everyone realizes that's a complicated scenario. It's like, how do you
very complicated.
How do you deal with this? That's a lot of data, a lot of items, a lot of different versions of items. How do you even remotely tackle that?
I mean, maybe this is something you can speak about. So they've said they have a running version of 1.12, right?
Yeah, they have a reference client that they compare stuff to.
Okay, right. I don't know. Maybe do they even have like databases of 1.12 items and 1.3 items and 1.4? Do they even have this information?
I honestly don't know. I'm sure that's got to be documented somewhere, or they have it in some sort of data somewhere. But I honestly have no idea. From what I was told, like, the way they updated the game was that they basically, once everything, like, new version came out, they didn't really archive a lot of the very early builds of WoW.
Right.
That's why it ran into the problem of how do you do classic, and they happened to, like, from my understanding, was this could be wrong. I could be totally like sharing something that someone made up and told me, but they actually had found an old version that allowed them to actually have a reference client and do this.
Right.
So they happen to just find like a hard drive that had the data. They like it kind of that kind of scenario where it's like, oh, this actually exists.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I don't know if they have any of that old data, but I think if they had it, they're probably going to figure out ways to use it or leverage that data to accomplish some of that stuff. But it's one of those weird things that's going to make it feel weird. Because like you're saying, even private servers don't get progressive itemization. So I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Well, yeah. I mean, what private servers have to do? They have to find old like Alakazam or Thoughtbot old web archives.
Yeah.
And they have to find it for the appropriate time. And so it's sort of just like stitching together all of this stuff. And of course, things get left out that they can't find. There's no just database of all of it. It's just man hours trying to find these old web archives. So, I guess that I would hope that the classic dev team does have that information. Maybe they don't. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Yeah, for sure. I think all that's really important. This is a good question. Actually, this question really leads into something else that would be good. It would be a good time to talk about this. This is from Ragshots. He's kind of talking about. I think he's talking about he's talking about basically, you guys have released your guild applications. Stay Safe and Tips have released their guild applications. I'm going to be releasing mine a little bit later, and I'm probably going to get on that relatively soon once I kind of get some stuff figured out with some of my officers and whatnot. But he's talking about, maybe some planned guild fighting and Hillsbrad or something like that, some like little battles and stuff like that. We've actually talked about a lot of different events that we want to put on, maybe like ClassiCast related events, and whether it's like dueling tournaments or all kinds of stuff. We'll get into it more later because it's been a lot of just like, hey, like let's write this idea down, let's do this or let's do that. But I think our server is going to be a lot of fun to play on. There's going to be events and stuff that we're doing all the time, both personally and as part of ClassiCast together. I think it'll be really cool to do all kinds of stuff like that. Hopefully Tips won't be on a different shard like he is now, but but no, it should be a lot of fun. Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. So yeah, definitely something that we could see.
Yeah, absolutely. When you think of vanilla WoW, you think of like giant. I think of like obviously not the sinister, but I think of the funeral ganking. I think of the 40 paladins versus 40 shamans. I think of like these crazy player events, and we want to have duel tournaments and Gurbashi arena tournaments and all that stuff. I think that's all planned. Absolutely, it's going to be really badass.
Yeah, I think one of the big things, one of the big concerns that has come up for us is like the potential of like griefing and whatnot. Not having like a PTR. I think having a classic PTR would be like really, really good if Blizzard would go through and be able to actually like set something like that up for us in order to be like do like dueling tournaments and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think would be really, really cool. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, if not, like we'll have a lot of fun on our server, that's for sure. Let
me see here.
I like this one. What part of Classic WoW? I like this one for you, Caden. A question for all of you. What part of Classic WoW are you most excited about that is different from the current retail game? This is from Welsiak on Twitter. And we'll start taking some questions from chat as well too. Let's start with you. What is the thing that you're most excited about as far as like, I know you talked about like, going through and like doing some of the Blackrock dungeons, right? As far as like mechanically and certain things that you want to see, what is something that's really exciting for you as opposed to the retail game?
I'm excited about two things in particular. One is the old talents, because I feel like I've gone long enough without those. I do like the new talent system, don't get me wrong. I talk about that a lot where it's like, no, there's actually the new talent system is good for the current version of the game, but the old talents in the old version of the game, you have to have those old talents because the new talents would not work. So I'm excited about getting to play with the old talent trees again. And then on top of that, attunements. I miss I love doing all the TBC attunements. That is like a huge thing I think is missing from WoW. Like I know it's annoying, I know it's frustrating to get people attuned up, but it was such a guild like camaraderie thing where you helped people get attuned and you were doing it as a group. Like I love that. I want to have something like attunements again, and so I'm looking forward to running with like a group of people and getting everyone attuned and like helping all the rest of the guildies like
Yeah.
get the right attunements to go into say Molten Core, going into any of the dungeons. Like I want that really bad. Getting the
Yeah.
keys, like the old key ring, getting everything. I want that. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. Safe, do you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, I know this is like such a stupid thing, but I'm just like, the game was an adventure. Everything you did was an adventure. From getting world buffs to leveling to helping your friends out to it was all about the community and the adventure. I mean, there's going to be times when you think, okay, I need to go farm some gold, and you're going to be running to your gold farming spot. You'll get in a world PvP fight. You're going to get distracted. You'll be world PvPing for 3 hours because you'll be there. You'll call some friends in. Horde people will call there. It's just like the game is just such a crazy adventure, and that's what I'm looking forward to the most.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with both you guys. One of the big things, this is kind of like a story I thought about, when you're talking about attunements and stuff. We had one of the tanks in my guild, Prot Warrior, named JD. This was on my private server stuff on the YouTube videos, or my old YouTube streams. JD was, I think at the time, he might have been like the third tank in our guild, right? We had like 4 tanks, and he was tank number 3. And he was a good player, right? We just had like different guys. And we'd been kind of funneling JD some gear and trying to build him up, and he watches the stream from time to time. Yeah, JD and Black Panties. Yeah, dude, I miss those guys, man. But basically, what had happened was we knew that there was going to come a point in time where like JD's a good player. We need to prop him up, and we need to build him up to be able to take over the role as like main defensive tank, which is what ended up happening. And Black Panties was our TPS tank. So I remember JD, I think it was like Breastplate of Might, and he was like, yeah, like I don't know like what I should get here and what I should do here. So I remember spending like a whole day with him, like 8, 9, 10 hours off stream, and we were just like going all around the world. We were getting him Librams, we were doing Dire Maul, we went to the Burning Steps, and we did all this stuff. We farmed some stuff for him. I gave him some gold out of the guild bank to be able to get him some enchants. We got him +4. Like, I remember he wanted to get +3 stats on his chest, and I was like, dude, you're gonna have this chest for like at least 5 months. Just like I'll help you out. We'll get you the mats for +4 stats. I know it's more expensive. Here you go. Boom. Like, I know it's something as little as like 1 more to like strength, stamina, agility, whatever, but it's like if you're gonna have something for that long, you might as well do the best, right? Best is the standard. Right. So we ended up doing all that, and it was just a good time, man, and just kind of building that community. And your guild is like your family. This is kind of what I wanted to lead into. Having a guild, and don't get me wrong, Indestructible is a great guild. Dragon Saber is awesome. Like he's such a cool dude. Getting to meet him at BlizzCon and stuff. Like they're great guys. But whenever it was like my guild on my private server, like this was genuinely like my family. And I remember like whenever the guild ended up eventually disbanding, like I was so I was like upset. Like I was physically worn out. I was emotional about it because I didn't want twofold. I feel like my guild disbanded for a number of reasons, right? Classic was announced and a lot of people kind of lost it. My stream got banned, so it was hard to recruit. I felt like, I was kind of like losing my friends, right? Because a lot of people, they weren't just guild disbands, we're done. They were like, we're quitting the game. Like, I don't want to play with anybody else. Yeah. And then on the other side of things, like I kind of felt like I had failed a lot of people too. Like, and I know like it was happenstance, right? Where you're, the Classic comes out and people are just like, look, I got real life. I want to do other stuff before doing it for real in Classic. And just like having that feeling, like it just sucked, man. And I still talk to some of those guys whenever I get a chance, like they message and they watch from time to time. And sure, I'm not going to be able to play with everybody in Classic, but I don't know, that's one of the things I'm looking forward to, is getting able to reconnect with people, both that I played with on private servers and retail WoW. I think that's going to be really, really special.
Tips, what are you looking forward to most about Classic WoW?
The lack of sharding. But no, for real. Just like you guys said, the community, playing with people, seeing people like constantly, repetitively, over and over again, running to people that you saw, meeting new people. Just the community side of things, we joke around about like the ganking and stuff like that. Just having rivalries back and forth, Alliance, Horde, all the stuff that doesn't really exist, not just in retail, but really in any MMO today. All of that stuff that we experienced back in the day, and some, just all of that coming back is what gets me excited.
Yeah, for sure.
No doubt. It's all about the community. I mean, classic WoW gameplay is good. It's really good, but I really think, and I love it, like leveling in vanilla WoW. Leveling is my most favorite piece of WoW content ever. In any expansion, more than raiding, or it's my favorite thing to do ever. But still, that being said, the strongest selling point about classic WoW is the degree to which it incentivizes, fosters, encourages, necessitates teamwork, communication, camaraderie, grouping, making friendships, stuff like that, and not just friendships but rivalries. That's what goes on, man. It's good. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't wait to get the reputation and also hate the other faction and knowing names of people on the other faction on the other side of the server. Like, that was one of the funnest parts about DC or Wrath for me. It was seeing someone like in a battleground, or seeing, say, someone in like a Wintergrass, for example, and being like, oh shit, that's so and so run away. There was a multi-rank one Glad that used to be in our battle group by the name of Viral. He used to be a big rogue. And it was kind of like you feared him. He would rock you. He would 5v1, he would 1v5 people all the time. It was very common that he would just roll over people. If anyone from like the Ruin battle group, you probably know who I'm talking about. Yeah, someone said, I know Viral. Yeah, he used to be like feared, and if you got him in like a BG, you would run away from him because you knew he would win, no matter what. You couldn't do anything about it. Like, you were just gonna lose. And I want that again. I miss that server community kind of thing where you knew who everybody was, and it was kind of a tighter knit community. And even on the Horde side, you were intimately familiar with who these other people are because there was this mysterious kind of name to them, but you just knew the name would come murder you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always thought it was something that's cool. Like, I remember this is kind of like an off story, and it's happened in Burning Crusade, and this is one of the times that like I was like, oh, I made it. Like, that's how I felt. Like, I felt like I made it. I was pretty good at Ret. Like, I knew how to play my class. I wasn't a hardcore raider. I would guild hop, and I was kind of social, whatever. I was in middle school. But I hit my stride in Burning Crusade, and that's whenever I peaked. I remember somebody put in a guild application for playing a Ret Paladin. And it was a guild application to a guild called Aftermath on Kel'Thuzad. And this Paladin put in an application, talked about all this stuff, and okay, this. And one of my friends messages me, and he's like, dude, you got to check out this forum post on the Aftermath forums. And I'm like, okay. So I look at the post, and he's like, go down to post number 7. Scroll down to post number 7. And basically I look through it, and this guy's applying, talking about all this stuff, and these people are like, okay, dude, whatever. Post number 7 is like, hey man, look, I'm sure Ret Paladins are great and all. You can bring one to a raid, like, we get that, but like, you're just not ready. Like, is what he said. Like, you're just not up to snuff for like what we're looking for in our guild. He said, come back whenever you're on the same page as like Burnout, which is a guy who was like totally stacked, a totally stacked player. I think he was in high caliber in vanilla WoW. And he was a Ret Paladin. Well, he's a Holy Paladin, but he got a bunch of Ret gear. And he said Burnout, that was the guy who I was like, man, I wish I had Burnout's gear. I always thought that. And then he said somebody else, and then he said, or S-Fand. And I was like, dude, like, it was like such a moment of pride for me, because I knew like Aftermath, high caliber, like some of these guilds, like these are like hardcore, like big time guilds. And then the fact that somebody mentioned me, like one of their officers mentioned me as like, come back when you're like S-Fand. I was like, dude, I don't know. I just felt so good about that. I still think back on it, and it's such a nice feeling. Yeah, that was nice. I don't know. I just wanted to say that because
that was nice. Very nice.
I was happy. That was nice. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Let's take some questions from the chat actually before we go. We took some questions from Twitter, guys. Again, please, if you haven't followed us yet, Stay Safe TV, Tips Out Baby Sakar, our guest, Caden House, former CM Yithesons, who's got plenty of stories, I'm sure, about Blizzard. I mean, he'll tell you guys, I'm sure, on his own stream about whenever he deleted Dalaran. So yeah, that was a really good one, I thought. And again, Follow Stay Safe, follow Tips, YouTube, Twitter, all that stuff. It's all on the screen. It's in the chat. Please go follow them. Yeah, and follow me too if you like. My YouTube channel as well. I think I'm going to start doing some more YouTube content again. I kind of come and go with my YouTube content, but I recently got a join button on YouTube, and I feel like there's a level of responsibility that comes with that, so I probably should start making some more YouTube YouTube videos. And yeah, so we should be doing that. So if Vanilla WoW is successful, do you think it will shift development philosophies of retail WoW? This is from Raphael the Raven. I think that's a good question. I think that there's stuff to be learned from the success of Vanilla WoW, because if something works in Vanilla, like, wow, people seem to really like this, it might somehow, it might affect the game positively, to say like, okay, well, like this works in Classic, like maybe we can make something like this work a little bit more like this in retail. I also think that they're two different games, and that you have the opportunity to really reach two different markets of people with these two different games. And sure, you're going to have some overlap, but there's going to be people who like retail the way it is. There's people who like LFR. They're crazy. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, there's people who like LFR. There's people who like stuff like that. And that's fine, right? That's for them. But there's people who like Classic, and they don't like Classic, and that's fine. Like, it's just people have their own preferences, you know? I don't know. I think that you could see like some positive impact from the success of Classic on retail, but I also think that they are probably, and they probably should, keep the two games separate for the most part.
Yeah, I think definitely, and of course this is just my speculation from the outside, I think they're trying to appeal to two completely different demographics. You know, there's going to be crossover, but I think they're trying to appease two different demographics. I don't know how many. Yeah, I don't know if they're going to take like developmental crossover from Classic back into retail or vice versa. Hopefully not vice versa. But yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't expect that.
What do you think, Tips?
No, absolutely. Agree, Andy, 100%.
Agreeing, Andy. There we go. There we go. I completely agree. Squad W.
There you go.
So Sakar, from your experience, or from your perspective, could you see the effectiveness, like something being effective in Classic, potentially having an influence on retail WoW?
I think it's reasonably to kind of assume that.
Okay.
It's reasonable to assume that, because if you're going to have... It's natural to think that if, say, a developer is sucked into something, say, like, for example, Classic, you might kind of see some ideas kind of kick off where they could kind of bring maybe a little bit of that to retail. It could be a world where you know, they go back and they experience something again. They're like, yeah, this was really fun. Like, this would be good to do this again, or do something along those lines. Or what if we could do this but do it better? And kind of do like a modern spin on, say, something like attunements, for example. We could, you know, if devs are experiencing that again, it's like, oh, this is really fun, we could bring this back. There's old talents that they could experience again, and they're like, oh, maybe we should figure out a way to do a modern version of this. And it influences the ideas of, say, 9.0 or 10.0, if we, you know, if WoW keeps going along those lines. I could see it happening. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. I think it's very reasonable to assume there will be a separation very clearly between retail and Classic, but once everyone is in Classic and experiencing Classic, I think we could see things come over from Classic, potentially. No idea, but
right.
It could happen.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Stay safe. Did you see a question that you liked, or?
Oh no, I just think we're getting down to the end here.
Okay, yeah. We're gonna take just a few more questions, guys. Again, at the end of the stream, what we're gonna do today is I'm gonna be hosting Stay Safe, so you guys can hang around. You guys can go to his channel and watch that. We're still gonna take a few more questions here from Twitch chat, and yeah, basically after the stream, I won't be streaming tonight, and Stay Safe will be streaming. I may stream super late, possibly after Stay Safe streams, but we're gonna host Stay Safe, and yeah, he's gonna have a good time. It's gonna be great.
We're gonna pump.
Yeah, dude, just pump, dude. Just pump it, dude. All pump, no dump, dude. That's what it's all about. So let's see. This is a good one. This is from Perley. Would you be in favor of battle groups straight from the start, or would you think because of higher server populations, they will only be needed to be implemented when the populations dwindle down? I'll go ahead and start on this one. So we don't know exactly what the server pop is going to be. We're assuming that it's going to be higher. The biggest issue, I think, with battle groups and with PvP in general, it's not about the number, the population cap number. It's about the ratio of alliance to horde and how many people are queuing, right? It's not about the raw number. It's about the ratios, the percentages. So that's something to consider. I personally do not like battle groups. I know it was vanilla. I know it was patch 1.12. But Stay Safe brought a really good point. This was like ClassiCast 3 or 4. This was really early on that we talked about this. Stay Safe put out a really good point. And he said, look, like, yeah, obviously it's not perfect. That's not something that we like, but it might end up being, eventually might end up being something that is a necessary evil down the road. But hopefully they don't need to do it, and hopefully it's not there from the start. Do you still kind of share that sentiment, Stay Safe?
I share that sentiment. And obviously, you know, for Burning Crusade and leading into Burning Crusade, you need to have battle groups if they choose to do classic TBC.
Right. That's true.
I really like don't like battle groups in the majority of vanilla WoW though. You know, it's a sort of like last ditch thing if servers are just totally imbalanced. Excuse me. But there's something so cool about, you know, you're level 27, you see a horde player and you kill each other a couple times and you move on, and then you see them at level 43, you kill each other. You remember each other's names, you kill each other. Finally, you're level 60, you queue a battleground, you see that same guy, you're like, oh, it's that guy, dude. I hate that guy. Dude, that guy camped me in Stranglethorn Vale for 3 hours one. So there's that familiarity you have with players, and you lose that. With battle groups. I really like that familiarity and you know, it's not just horde players. You know, okay, you queue into a random battleground and you say, oh, you know, I did a dungeon with this guy. Oh, this guy is from a guild that I know is good on my server. Oh, so there can be a thing. There can be community in battlegrounds when there's not battle groups, and I prefer that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say
so
battle groups, they solved the problem, and I do think they were necessary at some point in vanilla. But so long as that problem doesn't exist in the early stages of Classic WoW, and hopefully it won't exist, I see no reason to rush them.
Mm-hmm.
They will need them at some point. It's a certainty. Like imbalance will happen, faction imbalance will happen, server populations will dwindle. You are going to need battle groups at some point. It was vanilla, it's fine, but why rush it if you don't need to?
Right. I think there's some things that are cool about battle groups, and it worked in Burning Crusade, kind of like Stay Safe said, where, you know, you get into the higher end arena, you just need more players at the higher end in order to be able to compete with one another. For people who don't know what battle groups are, because battle groups are actually that's old technology. It's like an old thing at this point. Battle groups were the first semblance of like cross server gameplay, cross realm gameplay, and how it worked is they went and they took a bunch of servers at the end of vanilla and they said, this server has like high alliance cap or high alliance pop and low horde pop. This server has high horde, low alliance. And they went and they matched a bunch of servers together, and there were like some more notorious than other battle groups just for happening to have like, you know, better competition in Burning Crusade and whatnot. Like I think it was BG9 with Tichondrius, and Nightfall battle group was pretty good with that was Kel'Thuzad and all that.
Rune was a good one as well.
Mm-hmm. So
people would transfer to battle groups that had lower ratings so they could have a better chance at getting like rank 1 titles.
Yeah. I remember that being a thing. Yeah. So people would, because before rank 1 was actually rank 1.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Like it was actually the top ranked guy. Like if you were like Merciless Gladiator, like you were the number 1 ranked team on the entire battle group. And there was like, I don't remember, 10 battle groups or something like that. I don't remember the exact number. It was 12 or something. Maybe I'm wrong, but so there would only be like 10 or 12 or whatever number rank 1 players or rank 1 teams with however many players on them. So yeah, that's what battle groups are, is basically clusters, server clusters. One thing that was cool about battle groups, and this is something that I just kind of thought of, is it did eventually expand as there were less players in the higher ratings in arenas. that you started to notice players more, like from other servers. Oh, this is this guy from that server. Who knows? With streaming and just the overall like the increased level of like connectivity, if they end up putting battle groups in late vanilla, that could end up actually being like a point of hype. Like that could be something fun. Like let's say you're playing a game and then whatever streamer, like you go into a battleground and then all of a sudden you're playing against like, oh, that's Bajira and he plays on a different server and I'm playing against Bajira now, or whoever, right?
I agree, but I think for it to be hype, it has to come in later. Like I think with battle
I agree.
groups,
Yeah, it can't be in from the beginning. Absolutely can't.
You need to be like reactive rather than proactive with trying to solve that problem. They shouldn't be there from the start.
Let's see. Is there any more questions from you guys before we? Oh, this is a good point from Druins. Well, I absolutely understand not wanting it. Coming from someone who was on a very low pop realm with about an 80-20 split, it was necessary. Yeah, and that's basically how it might end up happening eventually. Do I think that Classic WoW is good for people who have never played before? This is from J4Mess. Yes, absolutely. Yep. And this is a whole like can of worms, but a lot of people associate Classic WoW, Classic World of Warcraft with hardcore gameplay. It's like this game was like super difficult, retail WoW is easy and all this stuff. I think a lot of that stuff is some kind of crap. I think retail WoW is much more mechanically demanding than vanilla WoW is. I think a lot of the difficulty of vanilla WoW comes from knowledge and preparation. And you also are heavily awarded for time investment in vanilla WoW.
Yeah.
So I think kind of you want to continue on that?
I was going to say I think vanilla WoW does a really good job, maybe the best job of any iteration of WoW, of catering to really every demographic of player. If you can only play 2 hours a day after you get home from work, you're a normal human functioning adult, you have responsibilities. What you can accomplish in that time frame still is very rewarding. If you're a no life shut-in, you can play 18 hours a day. What you would accomplish in that time frame is also very rewarding. I think the game is fun for every demographic. That's how I think so too.
Yeah, it's much more casual friendly than people give it credit for. I played Dark Age of Camelot. I know people who played EverQuest. I know people who played, Asheron's Fall and Shadowbane and all kinds of other games before WoW came out. And WoW was considered a joke. Oh, it's like this Care Bear game. Like this game is going to be too easy. Like
I remember it was the casual game. I mean, it was the first MMO that didn't have an XP penalty when you died.
Yes, I was literally going to say that. Yeah, I was literally going to say that. I remember that being a joke. Like people thought it was so funny that you didn't lose XP when you died. But nowadays, like people would think that's insane. Yeah. And WoW was I always say WoW was kind of the first MMO in the new generation of MMOs where it kind of takes a lot of these old school principles and packages them in a way that still works. The graphics aren't so bad that like you can't bear playing it. The mechanics, the game is smooth, everything runs well. I remember like you could go across the entire map and you wouldn't have to hit a load screen. Like in Dark Age of Camelot, you would hit zone walls and you hit the zone wall, and what would happen is you would freeze for like 10-15 seconds and then you would load the rest of the zone. So yeah, just like stuff like that. That's like I said, first MMO in the new generation of MMOs where they implemented all this stuff that's like, what, like why is that even a big deal? On top of having some of the old school principles, which made it so good. I think Vanilla WoW is amazing, obviously, and I think that anybody can play it. I think anybody can play Vanilla WoW.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat where I kind of laugh when people say that Vanilla WoW was like the hardest version of the game ever. It's not. There's no way it ever was. It was just a time sink. Most bosses had like 2 mechanics, maybe 3 mechanics. Like, but when you look at say like some of the new fights, like Mythic Jaina, for example. Mythic Jaina has more abilities in one phase than some entire tiers did.
Yeah. Like,
it's insane. The level of skill that it takes nowadays, it's a totally different beast. It doesn't detract from Classic at all, or say it's any less of an experience or any less rewarding. I honestly think Classic is still more rewarding than the current version of the game, even though the current version of the game is way, way harder. You're getting more viable rewards, and it feels more engaging to actually play the game. In Classic, just with who you're playing it with. I think there's a very big difference between the two, but the modern game I still think is harder, but still, you know what I mean. Most everyone here is pretty much
difficulty. difficulty doesn't always equate to a sense of satisfaction whenever you complete it, right?
Exactly.
And
I mean, there's people
difficulty can help.
when they killed Mythic Jaina, they just uninstalled WoW because they were like, I'm done.
Yeah, dude, I was there. Like, I was literally there,
Yeah.
Pog. No,
He just uninstalled immediately. He's like, I'm not playing this game anymore, and quit the kills. He's like, I'm done.
Yeah, he literally quit the game. He had been wanting to quit WoW for a while, but he said he didn't want to quit because he didn't want to basically bail on the raid tier, right? So he wanted to go and he wanted to do the raid tier, do Jaina, and he just right there, boom, uninstalled the game. I'm out. I'm done. Which is crazy, right? It's cool, but you know, both from like a team perspective or guild perspective, and also like it's just like, look, I gotta finish. So I remember being there at the World First Race and just everything that was going on with like Mythic Jaina and just the countless hours. Well, I think they went upwards of like was it 400 attempts?
Yeah,
it was some insane number. I should know, but I can't remember.
I think it was like 380 attempts or something along those lines.
Yeah,
So
it was something insane.
I
But
think
then
the most they went was like what, for 14, 15 hours straight.
Yeah, I think that was the day before they killed it, I think. But yeah, that was nuts. I mean, that was an incredible experience getting to go there and be a part of that at Red Bull and all that. But it was so cool just to see like them do their thing, and it was great and great accomplishment and all that. But it's just different in Classic. It's just different. That's the best way that I can put it.
I would say that for the
346 attempts. That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah, I would say for the person that's asking if Classic, if go back to the original question, if Classic WoW is good for new people who've never experienced Classic, I would say yes. But if you were interested in the game, or if you had someone who was interested in the game, it doesn't hurt to kind of show them the current version, just because the Classic is a different beast in itself, but it's still the heart and soul is still there of what it actually is. I wouldn't have any objection to starting someone off in Classic at all.
Absolutely. And a great way to kind of, if you're curious as to how a Classic looks like from a gameplay perspective, we actually have a friend of ours who's in the chat right now. His name is Joanna. He frequently plays his entire leveling world record that he set back in vanilla on his stream. And actually, kid, and this is totally off topic, but I got to help this brother out because honestly, Joanna does so much for the community. His guides have helped thousands upon thousands of people out there get to level 60. Recently, Joanna received a DMCA strike on his account. He was streaming his original vanilla WoW leveling from back in the day. And I guess it might have been mistaken for private server footage or something along those lines. He doesn't know what he's supposed to do now. Do you know where he can seek recourse for this or anything like that?
I've talked to him a little bit. I've been trying to look in to see kind of what is, because I'm pretty sure I was probably the one that submitted it, but I don't remember the footage or like the gameplay. It's something I'm trying to look into to see if there's any way to fix that or handle it. I wish I could say something can be done. I'm just not a part of the team now that makes that decision or is involved in that process.
Yeah. Well, because there's like a whole process. Because I remember whenever we talked about this before, there's like a whole process that goes down, and then it's like there's like the contact on it where it's like, okay, here you go, and then you're like, okay, that's my job.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of what
which
it
is like big suck mode. I know, like, dude, you told me whenever you DM'd me, you were like, yeah, I had to watch a bunch of your videos, and I actually like liked the whole ton of them. It kind of sucked because like they made you do it, and I was like, yeah, it's just how it goes.
Yeah, I think I remember one of the things I mentioned was like, I was like, this is my first time experiencing your content. I was like, Paladin Police Force is the shit, but I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I know it's not personal, and like it's like a whole, like there's a chain of command and all that stuff that goes on.
Yeah, I'm looking into the Joanna thing when I can. I wish I had a concrete answer of what would happen along the lines of that. You know, if what Joanna had told me was happening, I don't see any problem with that, like playing that footage. I don't see any problem at all with it. But I can't make that call anymore. That's not not me. I have to kind of raise the flag and be like, can you please look at this and make a decision? That kind of thing. I wish I could say one way or another, but I promise it's being looked into. I'm trying to. Just time.
Of course. Right. Thanks, kid. No, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I can talk to my partner manager too, maybe, and see if he can like help, like, dude, maybe just because the fact that we talked about it on stream, even like maybe we could help him out, because I know, I don't know. Anyway, we'll talk about this later.
Yeah, we'll talk about it and figure it out. Yeah, DMCA's are a nightmare. They're a monster to deal with.
Mm-hmm. I think let's take one last question. This is from Adam Schwagens. How is Classic going to affect your streams? I love comfy YouTube watching streams, so stay safe. But I will 100% of stream time be spent in game after launch. As hype design for Classic, who doesn't love relaxing? Yeah, I think I'll start on this one because this was kind of on the tip of my tongue earlier. The content is going to be, especially now, all of us have kind of dipped our toes into doing more IRL, more variety, more this, more that. Stacey and I have been doing IRL. I think that with Classic WoW, you can't really stream everything that you do in Classic, especially if you're a guild leader. Like I said, I spent like 8, 9, 10 hours one day with JD, like help him get all set up to gear him up to eventually end up being the guy in case it needed to happen, and it did, right? And he ended up being a really good player for us. And I might not be able to stream all of that in Classic, right? Just because then you want to get like stream sniped and ganked and all that stuff like that. I think I'm sure we're still gonna have streams where we're like watching YouTube videos where we're just having a good time, relaxing, just chatting. I know if we're ranking, Stay Safe and I have both talked about this, like possibly ranking together. I don't know if I want to rank or Gen 1 rank. Stay Safe says he wants to rank or Gen 1 rank, right?
That's true, yeah.
So like this is something that we're kind of talking about doing. Maybe like we'll rank together, and then he'll stream for the first half, and then I'll stream the second half, and we'll basically be on each other's streams, and we'll just be talking about stuff or my break and like watch videos, like if we're like anchoring one game or this and that, because there's all kinds of stuff that goes into it. I personally think that I'm still gonna bring like a fairly wide variety of content to what I do. We'll have like nice, like, comfy streams where we're watching videos and doing stuff like that. But then we'll also have streams where it's like, boom, something's happening. Like we're going Paladin Police Force, we're cleaning up Searing Gorge. Like we're still going to be doing that kind of stuff. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. And I'll also be doing variety in IRL. And Stay Safe, I'm sure you're the same way. Because Stay Safe and I are more similar in terms of what we do than like Tips. Tips doesn't do like the IRL and stuff like that. But Stay Safe, do you want to go ahead and piggyback off of that?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm going to be honest, 90, probably more than that, 90+% of my content once Classic is out is just going to be playing Classic WoW. Like, as much as of course, there are things you can't really stream with Classic WoW, but as much as I can stream, I will stream everything that I possibly can. There's going to be days where I'm just, if not much is going on, where I'll be kind of burned out. I'm sure we'll watch YouTube videos and chill and hang out, do an IRL stream, whatever, go downtown. But that's what I want to do. I just want to stream Classic WoW.
Yeah. Tips, what about you?
Dude, when Classic comes out, I am not moving from this chair. Like my biggest goal for Classic is that the leather on this chair bonds on a molecular level to my butt cheeks. If I do not achieve that, then I have failed all of you.
Dude, let me give you a tip, dude. Just put on a few pounds because it's easy for me. I've had that no problem. It's been like that for years. So yeah. And yet, since you said, I mean, you might be working, or whether you're working or streaming full time. I mean, it's all like, up in there for you. You just know that you do plan on at least streaming a little bit, whether you're working somewhere else, or maybe even like, applying for a different job at Blizzard or something like that. So Is that right?
I'll be hopefully I'll be in a position where I can get time off for it. If I'm at Blizzard, that might be a little bit harder to do.
Right.
But if I'm at another company, I'll figure that out.
I got sick, guys. Sorry. It just so happens to be when Classic came out.
I couldn't get time off for any of our launches at all. Like, I tried. There's no way. I mean, I worked like 13, 14 hours on like the BFA launch day, and I couldn't get time off. I was trying to level at my chair, but my desk, but it's so hard to do. But
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I will definitely be playing and streaming, of course.
All right, guys.
Well, hey,
go ahead and stay safe.
I was just gonna say, thanks for coming on, man. It was good to have you on, dude.
It's been a long time coming. It's a long time coming.
Yeah, we've talked about this for months. It just hasn't really been able to happen until, like I said earlier. I don't know if I even said this today or whenever we talked about it before, but sometimes like an unfortunate circumstance or unfortunate events leads to really good things. So I know we all hope for the best for you. I mean, you've been a great, not just like a resource, you know, connecting, you know, the classic community to Blizzard, but also like just a great friend. You know, I mean, you've done a lot for all of us, and even if we again had to meet in a not very good situation,
Yeah.
but you've been a really good friend, and everything you've done really means a lot to not just us, but a whole lot of people.
Thanks,
So
man.
thank you for coming on, man.
It's weird to think a DMCA led to me being me, you know, having 3 new friends. I would know either Tip or Stay Safe if it wasn't for originally meeting you.
Well, yeah, hey, we didn't even talk about this today, but when we were down there at BlizzCon, it was really cool. So Yethicens gave us a tour of the Blizzard HQ, and it was so obvious to tell you were very passionate about everything. Like it was really badass. I can't imagine anyone that could have given us a better tour.
Yeah,
So,
for
thanks
sure.
for that again.
Mhm.
It was fun. It was awesome having you guys out. Like I was looking forward to you guys coming down like the entire time leading up. Like whenever I was approving your BlizzCon passes, I was like, I'm gonna give them a tour. Like yes. And, yeah. For anyone who saw the pictures of them at the campus, what you don't see is I was the one taking the picture.
Yeah, there you go. Photo cred.
Yeah, photo credit.
For sure. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining us for ClassiCast. Again, please follow Sakar. Please follow Stay Safe TV. Please follow Tips Out Baby. Follow their YouTube channels or sub to their YouTube channels. Follow their Twitch channels. Follow them on Twitter. We really appreciate you guys being here. We appreciate all the support. And I'm actually going to host Stay Safe today. Stay Safe's going to stream. And I'll end the ClassiCast. I want to thank some people who resubbed and whatnot. And I'll go ahead and host Stay Safe. If you guys want to go ahead and head over there, if you guys want your shout out for resubbing, then you guys can hang out here, and then I'll just host him here in a minute or two. So again, thank you guys so much.
I will dip and just go live now. Take care, everyone. I'll see you guys soon.
Do it.
Later.
Hey, buddy.
Thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys later.
Peace.